I got Tim's as well.
Yeah, I got Tim.
No, actually, Bill sent two.
Harass.
We're gonna, almost all the points are in here.
Right.
The only thing that's not in here is his suggestion that in lieu of eliminating single and two-family homes from VC, I prefer to see the lot size smaller, but in fact, there isn't any lot size requirement anyway, so.
No, there is in BC for single family.
I know, but if you take single family and dwelling out, which is what we're intending to do, then there's no
Right,
lot size.
but- Right, Bill was suggesting move it in and get rid of the minimum lot.
To leave the.
That's
single-
what Bill's suggestion was.
Yeah.
That's- Instead of taking it out, take out the minimum lot size and the 25% lot coverage.
Yeah,
Which,
but I think that's the only thing that he talked about that we don't have already in your list here. I went through the list and it seems like you covered pretty much every point that he had. Or that anybody had, actually, it's some repetition, just backup and so forth.
Mm. new perspective.
Okay, it's 2:31, we'll open the meeting. We'll start with a roll call with Rich.
Rich Rita, ex officio.
Bill Spence, member.
John Racine, member. Wade Waite, member.
Wendy Rathie, remember?
Rob Wilson, alternate.
Hey, Rob, we do have a quorum, but I'm gonna seat Rob as a member today. Okay, we're here to basically discuss the results of the public hearing that we had last week. There were quite a few comments, and Tara has listed most of them on this list here. It's been handed out to everyone. There were a couple of communications that didn't get read last week that I'd like to read now. Just so that the board is aware of them.
I have one comment too when you're done.
Yes, okay.
When you're done reading.
There's a communication from Mr. Ryan Turncliffe. Dear Water Valley Planning Board, I am a proud new property owner in the town at the end of the road, having succumbed to the draw of the natural environment and social fabric of Waterville Valley over the past 2 years, making our place more permanent in Waterville Valley was inevitable. As a civically oriented person who serves the Finance Committee of the town of Ashland, Mass., my primary residence, I am mindful of the vital role that the town committees and boards play in shaping and maintaining a sense of place as described in the master plan. It is both a taxpayer and one who spends much time as possible in the valley that I provide the comments in response to the zoning amendments being considered for adoption at the 2019 town meeting. It is with sincere regret that I am unable to attend the public hearing in person due to work commitments. In preparation of these comments, I have read the master plan, site plan review regulations and zoning ordinance and have reviewed the zoning map and attempted to discern the general context of proposed amendments. Unfortunately, I was not able to review the actual proposed text since it was available in the town hall and the post office. As such, I hope you would grant me some leniency should I have misinterpreted your intentions in my read of the notice of public hearing. I look forward to attending one of your future meetings. Comments on proposed zoning amendments. Amendments number 1, no comment. Amendment number 2, part B of the proposed amendment, enabling planning board to approve planned unit developments and eliminating the extra step of select board review for the PUDs is of great concern to me. While greater flexibility as the site design should certainly be the prerogative of the planning board, the requirements of the select board review of the plan should not be removed in the process as a process step. PUDs are not a trivial matter. The size and appearance of PUDs, along with the requirements for municipal services required to have the potential to fundamentally impact all residents of Waterville Valley. I do not feel it is too much to require a developer with the potential for substantial financial gain to seek additional approval of the select board. From the master plan, the plan will aid, quote, "The plan will aid the selectmen and planning board in designing ordinances and regulations that result in preserving, enhancing the unique quality of life and the culture of the town." Emphasis added. I have been unfortunate enough to see potentially significant negative consequences of not having select board like we do, developments with a slightly different perspective than the planning board might have. Is there really a need to facilitate a more lenient, is there really a need to facilitate a more lenient PUD approval? Amendment 3, while on the surface, the intent of proposed changes enable commingled commercial and residential space and the addition of questionable need for additional commercial focus zoning in Waterville Valley, there are potential negative consequences to the natural, social, existing commercial environments to such a proposal. The board is referred to section 2.1.13 of the master plan, wherein, quote, "Our physical environment is the keystone of the future. The beauty of the valley must be protected while allowing smart build out of the town. As land becomes developed, extra vigilance must be exercised in development within the context of the master plan. Protecting and preserving our natural resources is of prime importance." Amendment number 3, quote, "Would remove single-family dwelling, a two-family dwelling or two-family residential unit from the allowed uses in the village commercial district. It is very challenging to understand why this amendment would be made. Indeed, it would seem more natural to focus commercial development into a central location, this currently zoned commercial district, than to restrict housing potential from the east side of Valley Road north to Waterville Place. Forcing this area, which borders national forest and includes an important recreational trail network, to be highly commercially focused is circumspect. Potential negative consequences include the need for additional lighting requirements, acknowledging the effort to protect dark sky. Additional vehicle traffic would be potential disrupt pedestrians, bikers, skiers, and so forth, and greater impervious surface to support parking for the businesses and residential units. See comments on proposed amendment number 6 below. Important other considerations. Open space requirements appear to be less restrictive for non-multifamily dwellings, and there is only a 5-foot setback from the WMNF. The physical location of commercially focused property should not only be considered from the perspective of the road, but from also the forest, where the trail network, vital to our recreational opportunities in Waterville Valley, lay close behind. Single-family oriented dwellings are less likely to be obtrusive from both perspectives. One of the most important reasons that our family purchased property in Waterville Valley was to avoid the strip mall of Route 112 in Lincoln. Surely this is not the intention. However, let's not make it more feasible for developers to buy Valley Road as a site for low potential income generating properties. Instead, please work to preserve the natural lay of the land and minimize the housing and PUD footprints or restrict them altogether. Dwelling units would still be allowed in both the district above the ground floor. While this may be more acceptable to the commercial district, the village commercial district, in both districts, there is a potential for empty storefronts with residences above. Indeed, though perhaps with the best intentions in mind, without secure commercial business, a developer could propose a commingled property with the intent to maximize residential income. Even with a commercially developed property, there is no guarantee of business success over the long term. In my opinion, it would not make sense for this allowance to exist in the village commercial specifically. I agree with the proposed amendment pertaining to commercial district itself. Amendment number 4. Acknowledging my limited perspective, this proposed amendment seems unnecessary on the surface. While a 20-foot setback could make sense in the urban community, the 35-foot setback allows an opportunity for a planned separation between road and storefront that could include natural features or landscaping while still allowing visibility to storefronts. Such features could enhance the pedestrian experience, including allowance for placement of plowed snow in a heavy winter, ensuring the sidewalks and storefronts are clear. It is unclear why a 20-foot setback would be advantageous. Amendment 5. As noted, I was unable to see the proposed changes. However, the planning board is urged to consider amendment language specifying or considering availability of centralized parking as it relates to new development, particularly commercial development. Benefits to visitors and citizens include reduction of vehicle traffic and more pedestrian or cyclist-friendly opportunities. Limiting the creation of additional impervious surface would be tangible, if not immediately measurable, environmental benefit. Number 6, I would like to commend the planning board for putting forward this amendment. It would also encourage, to the extent possible, that current property owners be notified of the updated language such that it may be applied voluntarily across the township. If the amendment does not already consider it, the addition of a motion-sensitive timer based on lighting timer-based lighting may also be added to the board to both protect dark skies while ensuring modest and pedestrian safety, motorist and pedestrian safety. Presumably, the board would, should this environment pass, suggest changes in the site plan review regulations with regards to lighting as another source of informing developers of the new requirements, 7 through 9. These amendments make sense and will strengthen the community for the zoning. Thank you for your service to the town. The work is challenging and changing. I greatly appreciate your proactive consideration. Should you have the questions, if you'd like to follow up any comments and suggestions, please feel at liberty to direct them at the email, phone address provided below, and we can provide that.
Thank you all.
Okay, we had 2 members that came in, acknowledged Bill and Nancy, and therefore, well, I'm gonna have to unseat them. There was, one more communication. And I'm not sure I'm gonna give it to you.
Okay.
This is from the Waterville Valley Waterville Valley Company. Dear planning board members, thank you for your efforts to change the update the Waterville Valley zoning ordinance. This is small. In an effort to accommodate the flexibility in development. As you know, the Waterville Company Incorporated is the largest landowner in town, the largest taxpayer in town, and is impacted by these changes more than any other party. The Waterville Company has paid taxes on our undeveloped land since mid-1960s, patiently relying on the underlying value, which is totally reliant on the property rights set forth in the zoning ordinance. There are 4 major changes that severely diminish our property rights, the value of our land, and reduce the opportunity for development. I would reluctantly note that this land value is how we secure the credit line for our bank, which in years of insufficient sales is how we pay the taxes. These are the 4 areas of serious concern. The elimination of single-family dwellings and 2-family dwellings in the village commercial district is a radical change, and the elimination of valuable property rights. It effectively reduces uses by right to the point where this land will remain undeveloped for years to come, which is not economically an appealing prospect. Number 2, the elimination of facilities for construction equipment, contractor yards, maintenance facilities in the village commercial district is hard to understand. Where do you think these essential uses will go? Out of the town is the answer, and substantial increases in cost of the services of property owners and residents. This should remain as a use by right, and storage facilities should be added. Number 3, the elimination of the multi-family dwellings in commercial 1 district removes another valuable property right and may well decrease the density in this zone. 2-family dwelling units should be added in this zone. Number 4, alpine ski lifts should be allowed as a use by right in all districts. This aerial transportation system to the mountain would be a tremendous economic stimulus to the resort. It would have lots of hurdles, but there is no good reason to make it more difficult. I hope the planning board utilizes these comments from the public hearing to make the zoning ordinance a better document that stimulates well-planned development. Thank you for listening. We also have 1 comment from Ray Petrowski. It's very short, I'll just read it. I would propose the revised zoning for flexible off-site parking as written be limited to commercial use to limit the distance to 300 feet for residential use. 1,000 is a long way for residents to go. That has to do with the
I captured that in the hearing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so, Tara, I don't know, did you want to take over and, oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Rich.
Yeah, one comment goes along with the last letter you wrote. As everyone here is aware, the the dam armoring project is set to begin in a couple weeks. And as part of that project, we had requested the town had requested from the Waterville Company use of their land for storage and staging. Bill, in his capacity as the, I believe, CEO and president of the Waterville Company, informed the town manager, and this is about a week ago, maybe 9 days ago, and the director of Public Works Department, or Municipal Works Department, I guess is the more proper term for it, that given the negative consequences for the value of the company's property, if we proceed with the amendments that we have proposed, that the company would reluctantly reject our request for the use of their property for staging and for storage. The town manager and the director, Jim Mayhew, the director of the Municipal Works Department, I'm getting that right, informed the select board that there's other land that we can use to satisfy that requirement.
I would suggest, thank you, Richard. I would suggest the board take neither fear nor retribution in mind when working with the amendments we're talking about. What we're talking about is what's best for the town, and I think we should stay with that in mind. Tara, did you want to take us through these changes?
I think, I've tried to get them in a list in a way you could just go through them and make a decision of what direction you want to give me on each. And then there was some suggestions of Bill Kentland's to circle back to in his letters if, when we talk about the residential uses, he had some alternative suggestions in mind there. So, and what's not on the list, we started out the conversation talking about some definitions to add, and I have that noted separately already. Add conditional use permit and expand the definition of the ski lift. What's one other in there somewhere? Public Transportation Center, I had a note there. I don't know what you want that to mean. I need to define it, but I don't know what you want it to mean. So maybe start with that and then go to the list, and then I won't forget that.
So you need a definition of public transportation.
Right. What do you? I mean, we don't need to get into wording. I'll come back to I'll circle back to give you revised wording to decide on at your November meeting, right? That's where you'll chew on some alternative wording and vote for a December public hearing. But I need to leave today with direction.
I think that might date back to when we were talking about, buses or something like that, where perhaps would need a bus terminal or place for cabs to pick up people, or that would be my understanding. I don't know how the board interprets that.
So it might be a terminal or a stop.
Yeah, I think at one time there was thought of bus service to Plymouth, and there would have to be a place for the people to wait for the bus.
Well, I would think that realistically, if it's going to be very difficult to build an aerial transportation system, as mentioned in the letter, to get the money together to do that. So in light of that, I would think the concept of a terminal for a bus system, around the village and the rest, is something that we should certainly allow.
Yeah, I'll jump in because I got walked through Bill's presentation that he got from the same consulting group that did the pedestrian study. And he was looking at having a terminal to have more efficient, void of an aerial transportation system, a bus system that, that would bring everyone from the valley to a central point in his plan, and then there would just be a bus going back from there. I'm not sure if that's what he means.
That was located, as I recall, basically where the parking lot is now.
Yeah.
Across from Town
Right,
Square.
and we have that permitted in BCC one and SC right now, but we just have to define it more clearly.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I think the question came up in talking about the aerial transportation. Well, does the public transportation, do we have a conflict in here, or do we need to define that to be clear? It doesn't mean the terminus to
I think it's
a
two
tram.
separate issues. I think it's two separate things. Yes.
Why? I mean, if we're talking about aerial transport as moving people, I mean, it seems to be public transportation terminals or anything involved with moving people, right? So wouldn't the aerial transport be that
Just
as well?
such a specialized item, that's all.
But it would fall under, we want it in BCC one or Federal Civic, right?
Well, I guess that's one of the items that's coming up, is what was called the ski lift, and if we're gonna call it aerial transport, where do you allow it? Where do you allow it as a permitted use? Where do you allow it as a special exception? I think it was allowed as if we're talking about a aerial transportation being a ski lift type thing, I think we currently have it as a special exception in all zones. I think that there was quite a bit of emphasis by the resort area and the Waterville Company to make it permitted, at least in the commercial and special, perhaps special civic and also village commercial. I don't think that would go as far as making it permitted in high density, low density residential, although that's up for discussion. I think that that's where we are at this point.
Well, right now, the public transportation terminal special exception in LDR and HDR and permitted in BCC one and SC. And, I mean, I kind of said this and they laughed when I said this, but I could see the terminus being, obviously, they have to be connected, right? You can't have the terminus over here in the line and cars over here, but I could see the terminus being permitted in the BC and C1, but the rest being special exception, even though they have to be connected, because it's, even though, and I confirmed with the municipal association attorney that we were right, that they would have to buy air rights over people's property to do the lines. That's still not addressing the impacts on the neighboring property. I mean, obviously, there's an impact on the neighbor's property too, especially with some small lots. That's what I would think the reasoning for special exception would be for an aerial transportation system.
I think the point that was being made relative to, even if they were able to purchase the air rights, they're trying to minimize from there on in the amount of aggravation they'd have to go through. It's gonna be so difficult to build that thing that you don't wanna create another hurdle which allows your neighbor to say, well, I can see it and therefore I object to it. That was their point.
Right.
So I think it's something we could allow or not allow. I mean, it's,
Well, you're not, right now, I mean, you're not allowing it or not allowing, you're having it be a special exception. So that
well,
there's a close look at a
their
public
point
hearing.
being special exception would virtually kill it.
Why is
Because
that?
nobody would grant a special exception. Well, the way this town works, I mean, that's pretty much the way the town works.
Suppose it was a conditional use permit that came to the planning board. Is the concern the second step of the ZBA? I mean, we could shape it to be an innovative land use control under 674-21 and have it be a conditional
Well,
use permit by the planning board, and then it would be part of the site plan review process. What that would do would give the planning board the right to say, no, not in this location as part of the site plan review process, whereas usually it's coming for site plan review because it's already decided it's okay in that location, and what you're deciding is how it looks and that the access is safe and all that, but it would still make it a one-stop shopping for the applicant. Might that be more palatable?
The truth is, I just can't get terribly excited about it because I think we're looking at something that's never gonna happen, ever.
But it would be fantastic if it did happen. I mean, we've been hearing about it since day one
Yeah.
of being here, and we shouldn't make it harder.
Right, in which case, you'd basically say they have the, if they can get the overhead permits from the landowners, it should be allowed, and that's it, that'd be the end of it.
So what you're saying, Bill, is, in order for them, there's a property owner that lies right under the proposed line, overhead line. And so the resort area, whoever the developer was gonna put in the aerial transportation, has to go to that landowner. And has to say,
It's apparently according to
You have to
theory,
give
you've
me
gotta buy you've gotta buy air rights.
Yeah,
Yeah, so they would have
So
to
they're protected
negotiate an
anyway.
agreement on air rights.
so they protect.
Whoever goes directly, the question of your neighbor who can see it is less clear. And, they don't have to buy air rights from the neighbor, they only have to go over the one condo.
and it's definitely, it's not just seeing it, it's an invasion of the neighbor's privacy to have people going in.
Right,
Potentially
Well,
noise too.
You're gonna have this big pillar sitting
Yeah.
on somebody's property,
yeah,
and it may be a few feet away from your lot line.
I was thinking more about
It
the
may be.
people
Yeah,
looking
right.
down in your
Right.
windows.
I think that we were to bring this before the town, it would cause a deep storm.
Well, it's permitted now. I mean, I think the
Especially-
proposal is to change it from
Right.
permitted to special exception. I'm pretty sure it's permitted right now.
It was an essential part of the very original plan, elsewhere. So it's in everyone's psyche that it's a possibility.
So I understand the developer's point of view of the number of flaming hoops through which he's gonna have to jump in order to obtain the permits that are necessary, never mind the money that will be needed in order to build it. You don't wanna discourage
right,
this
right. You don't want
completely.
the planning to be another hurdle he's gotta clear that eventually could do him under. That's their argument. Now, how many, if you want an aerial transportation system, you almost have to kind of force it in. Or otherwise, what are you gonna do? You're gonna get one neighbor objecting and they're gonna hold it up?
Not necessarily. It's not a veto power.
Right.
It's a public hearing. It's where even if you did it as a conditional
Yeah,
use
well-
permit with the planning board, it's a public hearing, so you hear and weigh all of the concerns. It's
Then
not
I
like a
think in
neighbor
that
can
case, you
veto
have
it.
to specify the criteria that somehow you would use to establish whether you approved it or not approved it.
Right.
I mean, safety, noise could be a factor, but, I think it's ugly. I don't know whether you can use that as a criteria.
I don't see why not.
Well, you can, but I think that would, in my opinion, it virtually, destroy any chance of actually ever doing it.
Yes.
Because someone is always gonna find it ugly.
Well, right.
Except that our aesthetic is sort of defined as a mountain, alpine mountain community, and what's more of that than a trail?
Unless that giant pylon is next door to you.
Right. In
Right.
that case, it's
Yeah.
nicer.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it seems to me that the odds are that if it happens, will be long gone. It seems to me that it's such a large and important development for a town like this, that there ought to be public hearings, and a planning board should have a role in determining whether the town wants to go down that route. I mean, it's not just the resort areas and the Waterville Company's town. It belongs to a lot of people, and they should have a say in giving the business entities use by right takes that say away for the most part, maybe completely, from a lot of people in this town, whatever their preconceptions were about the town.
The special exception criteria are, the proposed site is appropriate location, will not adversely affect or result in diminution of property value, including consideration of noise, traffic, lighting, hours of operation, increase in the volume of velocity or decrease in quality of stormwater runoff, no nuisance or serious hazard to vehicles or pedestrians. So there's some clear in there and there's some vague, right? Appropriate is kind of subjective. But you could pull out some of those and, as Bill said, put it as a conditional use criteria. If you wanted to get rid of the
I
big
like the
ones
conditional use.
because you're concerned.
So there is one-stop shopping, because I mean, if a project of that magnitude and millions of dollars in the top is gonna rise or fall on the basis of a planning board review, then it's probably not a good idea to begin with anyway. I mean, if it's that knife edge, seems to me.
Well, if I were a developer, what the planning board is gonna require, will give me a detailed map of what you're proposing to
Yes.
do. So you have to do all the engineering work,
Right.
and with the chance of it being turned down,
Right.
I don't know.
Welcome to the world of business.
But you would come in with I
Anyway,
would expect
Well,
you
they
to come in
can't
with
come
a
in and
preliminary plan.
conceptually review. I'm thinking of going over in this direction. Is that something you're inclined to do or not inclined to approve?
Or I would assume they'd start like that. Before they go try to buy air rights, what concerns would you have? What would you like us to look into?
as a concept, I mean conceptual.
As a conceptual,
Yeah.
yeah, why wouldn't they do that? They'd be
And
foolish
also,
not to.
we're trying to condense the center. And what better way than to have everyone parking there as a terminus to access the mountains, to access who knows where else? I mean, that would increase density in the center, which is one of our goals.
Does anybody know whether you can put a turn or a curve in a lift?
Yes.
Sure.
You can?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Sure.
I can't
But a
think
few
of
of
I've been on that haven't run it.
It's just more money. You gotta, well, it depends on the kind of lift, but if it's assuming it's a gondola, you gotta do a transfer if you're turning it. So,
I just wonder how much flexibility there is in the route.
I wouldn't think I had
Depends on
a
the
lot.
route, presumably, where, I mean,
But who knows where technology.
I don't think that would be appealing to any developer.
no.
No, because you can't make a gondola make a turn. In other words,
In
if
flight.
you refer to
Yeah.
a transfer, it means you have to have everybody get off and get on to the next section that goes off
Well,
in a
no,
different
you
direction.
can actually transfer the gondola. But you'd need a station, you need an unload station built and a reload station,
You
but
just
you
go
don't
around it.
physically have
So
to
you
get out
have
of
to
the box.
disconnect from the line in one direction
Yeah,
and
then
connect to the
pick up the
direction.
line in the next direction.
You can't just go around and post.
Not that I'm aware of.
I don't think so.
You just can't build your hotel around the little old lady's house in the middle that doesn't want to sell to you.
All right, so we have an impasse, a dilemma.
No, I don't think we're supposed to vote. I think this is just for our discussion, right?
Well, on the one hand, we want the town to develop. On the other hand, we don't want to disappoint town residents to the point where they turn on the planning board and say, what the hell did you do that for?
Well, it's always
Well-
been in the language, it's not.
Yeah, I was gonna say-
Don't change it.
Well, it's already in there.
Yeah,
is a proposal.
what's the fundamental question that we're trying to tackle?
You were proposing change it from permitted to special exception, and the pushback is on that.
To build it by right.
It originally was permitted in all zones.
It's always been permitted until now.
In all
Right.
zones,
Still
and now
It's
it's,
still permitted.
it's still permitted by special exception.
The
No,
proposal.
so it's still permitted now, we're
Right.
proposing to change it.
So we're
Correct.
proposing to make a special exception, and that's what goes.
So that the planning board could have, and people can have some say, right,
In where it goes.
and where it goes.
Because otherwise we would have no say.
It would come to you already in a location for site plan review, but you wouldn't have any say over the location. If it's permitted, it's permitted.
And it's still be subject to public hearing and a butter feedback.
But you couldn't say, no, you can't put it there.
Right.
You want a site plan review.
Well, in the site plan review, if the abutter puts up enough of a stink, I think the planning board could say, you gotta move it.
Oh, sure. If
It's,
it's a special exception.
No,
No,
even if it's not a
Right
special
now, we're
exception.
saying it's not a special.
you don't have clear enough criteria in your site plan regs to say something doesn't comply with them. And I don't see that if it complies with the zoning, you could say, no, you can't do that here.
We'd
Under your
have
site
to-
plan regs.
Even if it was determined by the planning board that it was not a hazard, but a hardship on the abutter.
That's my opinion.
Well, the abutter has always got the right to challenge your decision, go to the ZBA, go to court. I mean, there's a lot of different things that a abutter can do after a while to prevent something from happening.
Even if it's a permitted use.
Oh, absolutely. You always have a right I mean,
The
look
thing
at, I mean,
is,
there's probably not very many memories, but the guy who owned, he didn't want that swale being built down below, what is that? The last development in there.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah, no, and anyway, he went to court. He had the money, he went to court, and eventually he got the water bill company to agree to buy his property, was the resolution of the court case.
but in general, you have no criteria in your site plan regulations, so I don't know what you'd be saying if something doesn't comply with. You have some general statements in your application requirements. You don't have separate site plan regulations. Like, I mean, I helped a town go to court to deny site plan approval in a case where there was a percentage in the site plan regs of how much green space had to be, how much landscaping, how much parking. And they were trying for a building that was too big for the site and they couldn't meet those. It was clear metrics. You don't have something like that in your site plan regulations. So I don't know how you actually deny something.
I-
As use.
I would think in order to protect the public as best we could, that we would leave it a special exception in the LDR and HDR zones, but make it permitted in the commercial, village commercial, and special civic. They're just different zones, and it's not like you don't have residences in those areas. So.
But you
Right
do.
now, need a, well, you can have multi-family residences.
But they're also arguing that you should keep allowing residential use. And so
I don't know, I think that if I was a property owner and I heard that they were gonna put a aerial lift right over my house, I'd want a little bit, number one, I'd say it was devaluing my property.
Mhm.
Right.
And they seem to be concerned about that.
Two things. Do we know where direction it's going?
I think the general idea is, right now, the thought is that it's starting in Town Square and it would be a straight run, apparently.
It looks like it would go over Osceola. I
Yeah,
mean, if you took it straight.
I spoke with Chris Noonan once, and we go right over Tri-Pyramid, Osceola.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Okay, so
It's a straight line.
that's a straight line, and that's the property owners they have to deal with, because there's not much after that, except
Does it bypass West Palm Road?
up by you, Bill, right?
I think it goes,
You go up.
I think it
through
goes
that
south
way.
of you.
Oh, no, I think pretty much if you look at a map, it would start in Town Square, go over, the
Yeah,
Osceola, and then straight up,
I
I
by
might be
Forest
limited
Service. It would
amount.
mostly go over Forest Service.
I think,
Yeah,
from
mostly,
the
I think you're right.
presentation I saw by Bill, it's actually in what's the parking lot now for Town Square.
Yeah,
Basically where
right.
the ski,
Yeah.
not the ski, the
Skateboard.
skateboard park is.
Yeah, the terminus. we're talking about.
The terminus, right.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just saying Town Square, I mean, but it's a little off of that, just, where the skateboard park is, that area there. It would be the terminus.
Yes,
And then a straight shot.
yes. So there's really not much residents I'm getting at that we're gonna be
Right.
dealing with. And we live, like you said, we live in a ski resort. Are you serious?
I have a
Yeah,
We live in a ski resort.
and it's gonna
You
raise
don't
the
belong
value of
here.
everyone's property.
Yeah, well,
You don't belong here if you're worried about
It's gonna lift all boats.
that. That's all.
So if you went with what Terry's throwing out, a special exception in LDR and HDR and permitted everywhere else, you could expand the definition of public transportation to include it. That's how you have that set up right now.
I have a photo of the presentation image. It starts, well, we know where the terminus is. It goes over the Black Bear parking lot to exit the town. And then passes directly over the parking lots going into the ski area. Straight line.
You're really looking at Green Peak, Tri-Pyramid, High Country, all the houses that go along the other side of High Country. That's where it's going, and that's somewhere in that area. Plus, is it Osceola View? On the other, south, what's the one south of High Country on the same side of the road?
Well, that's if you're talking about a butters or the rest.
Well, no, I mean, it could be any of those,
I think it becomes a two.
Tecumseh too. And then it goes up over, depends,
But then it's outside the town.
no, it doesn't go outside the town until it crosses West Branch. But I don't know how close it gets to, say, River Road. I
Yeah.
don't know.
I don't know.
And see, I guess the argument, I'm just trying to present the other side of the argument, which is, why shouldn't the town in its capacity, of the planning board be able to review such an application and have people make these sorts of arguments in front of the town, rather than having some kind of sense that, well, the planning board, even if it's a use by right, always can say no, but not really have anything to back that up. Why shouldn't a project of this magnitude not have input in front of a planning board, which will make a town determination?
Because if it's a special exception, it's not in front of.
Well, let me ask you a
Well,
question.
no, but the conditional,
Oh,
Suppose somebody
Conditional
came
use,
in and proposed that they would build a brand new hotel, what everybody wants,
yeah,
right?
spa hotel,
Right, spa hotel, right? They
it's what I
build
keep
one.
hearing about.
But a condition of it would be, they would
Right.
have to get approval to create this lift.
Right,
That's logical.
Right, that's what a developer is gonna do,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Now what do you
Yeah.
do?
again, it's a consideration. I mean, I don't say yay or nay. I like the idea of having a government body assisting in that decision on behalf of the public, as the representatives of the public at large, rather than being as concerned about the rights of developers or business owners. I think somebody has to balance that. To me, that's the other side of the argument. And a conditional use does seem one way to deal with it. And as I say, if that extra hoop, as it's been called, is going to be so determinative of whether to build a project, well, maybe it's not a good idea to begin with.
But it can chase off the investment, I think is the point.
But
Yes.
that's my point. If
The-
it's-
I think the developer will take the point of view
Yeah.
from whatever decision we make,
Mhm.
that we're giving them a positive signal or a negative signal. Are we encouraging them to say that we embrace the idea somehow? Or are we telling them that whatever they wish to do, we're going to be there to make sure that nobody in the town is offended or disturbed?
No, not nobody is offended. That
I mean,
town.
that's a possibility, but that the town's interests will be rigorously defended.
Karen, could you explain a little bit, just so we think of being clear with how the conditional use permit would be provided? In other words, the developer comes in, he knows he's gotta get a conditional use permit because it's a CU, allowance. Now, what would happen? How does that work?
You could set it up so that it's concurrent with site plan review.
All right, so he comes in with his plan, he presents it to the planning board, and the planning board, what do they consider that differently now than they would if it was a permitted use?
Well, I think that one of you was suggesting having a specific list of criteria in there with it, which might be a subset of the special exception criteria. Just thinking about things like safety and property values might be, but to
Well,
take out
I
what,
actually like his statement, which is if it's of overwhelming benefit to the town, that has to be taken into consideration somehow.
right,
It can't just be negatives. you know?
oh, right,
I don't
but
think
what,
necessarily would
what
be.
I was
Yeah.
suggesting
Right.
was taking out the vaguer language from the special exception
Right.
criteria,
Sure.
get rid of the appropriate kind of thing and put some specifics in there. So, yeah, I mean, add benefit to the community, noise, lighting,
I mean,
the things that are really gonna affect
We're assuming,
homeowners.
we're assuming that the people who are going to see this thing or have to live with this thing are not gonna want this thing. Many of the, if you look at the path of this thing, people don't live there. They're skiers. They'll say, hey, yeah, that's a great idea. That's only down the road from where my condo is. So I don't think we should assume it's necessarily going to be a negative view on the part of people, either abutters or people's property, air right property. It may cross.
Could
We are a
increase,
different
could
town in
increase
that
property
sense.
value,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
right?
Because we bill ourselves as a ski town.
It
so-
could also increase property value.
It could,
Because it
Yeah.
would drive up property values overall.
because more
Yeah.
people would want to
Yeah.
come here, and
Yeah.
more people then would bid
You
on
don't
the
know.
properties.
I mean, I think the issue before us is whether or not we want to stick with the idea of the planning board having a greater say in whether this could go forward or not. In other words, change it to the conditional use, perhaps not special exception. Or whether we want to leave it as is, and as long as it meets the general criteria we have for approving site plan, then off it goes.
I really don't see the real need to have a special exception over the three that I talked about, special civic, commercial, and village commercial. I wouldn't have any problem with going to permitted in those. And I'm questioning about the
There are-
HDR.
I'm sorry, I mean, if you're looking at it in terms of residential property, there is residential property on C1 and village commercial.
Well,
And there may be more, and
Maybe more.
I don't
there may
disagree
be
with
more,
that,
given
however,
the Waterville companies.
but if
Idea.
you're gonna have a residence in a commercial area, I think you kind of expect that there's gonna
Oh,
be
yeah,
some-
no, I just wanted to say that
Right.
it's a tough one to rely on.
Yeah,
To say there's no residential property in this commercial area. There is.
there is, but not LDR, this is what I'm saying. Yeah. You know, I'm not sure on the HDR. Pretty comfortable that LDR should be special exceptions if you're gonna go with those three.
Special exception or conditional use?
Well, I don't understand conditional use yet.
It's just really a way to put the special exception-like process in the planning board's hands instead of the zoning board.
Okay, but
Look at it that way.
you'd have to write some criteria, if you were saying, there's more to it than just saying, okay, to see you, if there's more, we'll have to follow up on it to
Right.
make it right, is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think you'd want to couple some criteria,
But it
what
would,
I'm hearing, you'd want to put some concrete criteria with it, not subjective terms.
no matter what you put in there, it's not gonna cover what it's gonna hit you in the face when that.
Sure.
When that person comes in.
Right, it's not gonna cover like the stuff that drips off it,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Yeah.
It's just-
Oh, it's dropping the ski pole, I mean, these things happen, right?
Right,
And then, the route that follows becomes a snowmobile route, people travel it all the time.
well, I think that's why you want some input on the location.
Yeah, but I'm fine with the conditional use, I just don't know what to put into the criteria.
Do we have time to create a conditional use? I mean, it's a whole new thing. How would that work with our time frame?
Well, I think
We have.
it's really just working out some criteria. I mean, just listening what I've done, I pulled some from the special exception criteria: safety, hours of operation, property values, noise, lighting, benefit to the community. It's a start, right? I mean, it's really just,
And so would that conditional use just be applied to anything? Like we could throw anything under conditional use?
well, you have one already. We've changed the PUD to
It's
a
a conditional
conditional
use.
use permit.
That's
Yeah,
true.
it's the very
Right,
last.
right,
So you have the concept,
that's true.
and the PUD has its own criteria.
I don't think there's any question that if this were to be constructed, that it would change the nature of the property use under and around these pillars and the overhead track significantly.
Maybe or maybe not.
It's mostly national forest,
Yeah.
almost entirely.
No, I mean, the part of it
In
that
the town.
goes
Part of it that goes through town.
through
yes.
town where
Yeah.
people live, where
Right.
over forest where nobody lives, that's not my point. But I'm, drawing on the recognition or the recollection of what happened when New York City built elevated highways over neighborhoods. These neighborhoods changed drastically.
I think you're kind of comparing apples and oranges.
Yeah,
Okay,
Not New York
but-
City.
Yeah, okay, I understand. I'm merely trying to, with an exaggerated example, say that whatever is under that tramway could likely going to change.
I
With
think if it's a condo filled with people who like to go skiing, it wouldn't.
And remember, we're not talking about individual property owners per se. I mean, these would be decisions that condos would have to make concerning air rights. And
If that's the route that's followed, but who
Yeah,
knows?
but
what's
we don't
gonna
know the
happen.
route, that's right.
It could take off and go over every other place too.
So are we talking conditional use, LDR, HDR, and permitted VCC 1SC?
Well, at least in LDR, I know whether or not HDR, if you want to go permitted, I don't know. I just want to make sure that the individual landowner in an LDR has the ability to come to the planning board and get heard. Because I agree with Bill, I mean, I think it's going to affect your property. Just go over to the Snow Mountain and walk out there to where that tower is right there. See if you want to have you're sitting out on your deck and then waving at everybody, and throwing stuff at you.
So would you be changing it,
That's my logic.
right now you have it proposed to be special exception and rec, permitted in snows and the green belt. So those would all be permitted, correct?
Yeah.
By what you're thinking.
As well.
I think my opinion would be that if you were going to take a special exception in LDR, you should do HDR as
Just
well.
here as well.
Not a special exception, but.
Conditional
that conditional use,
Conditional use. Yeah.
keep it in the hands of the planning board.
I could live with that.
It lets you be stronger in terms of the conditions you put on it than if it was just site plan.
So it gives the landowner a little more voice,
Gives you a little more voice.
gives us the ability to listen to the landowner.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
But they leverage the concerns. yeah.
Certainly, the company ought to be, anyone proposing to build it ought to be doing their work to convince people that this is a good thing.
You pay the right
Right.
prices.
Yeah.
All right, it's probably time to wrap this one up.
Well, that was the big one, so I figured.
Yeah,
So, all right, so, and again, I think the timing that would work best is if I give you some revised language to think about it in November meeting, and then you decide about a second public hearing.
Okay,
So
but if
I'll
this-
draft something on that for you.
should we go around and make sure everybody's in agreement with that?
Yeah, good.
Rich, what do you think?
Yeah, could you just repeat once again what the different zones are? Conditional use for,
It would just be conditional use in
Sure.
HDR and LDR.
and nothing else changes?
Permitted and everything else. And you should all be thinking
Yeah.
about, I'll draft something, but you should all be thinking about impacts that you'd like to see in that list of criteria too.
For the conditional use.
Yeah.
Bill?
In favor?
In favor.
In favor.
In favor.
In favor.
Yeah, I'm okay. I don't think we should be voting now.
No, we're not,
No,
we're
we're not.
just trying to get a general.
No, you
consensus.
just
And
for my
then what-
benefit,
We were okay with
We're
her
going
writing
in the
this
right
up.
direction.
you just
So
for
we
my benefit, making sure I know what my matching orders are.
Yeah, I'm okay.
Okay.
Well,
You
I
can't.
don't count.
Well, you count.
Count.
You
No.
count on
You
this?
could be
No,
voting
it's
next
not.
time.
It's not a vote.
Because the membership.
It's not.
Oh, that's right, it's not a vote.
Go ahead, Bill.
I wanna know
You
what
agree?
Oh, no, I
know
think
what
that's
you
dead on.
You agree?
It's not a vote, but you could be voting in November, so it's important to know
That's true.
now
Then
what
I'll
you're
count.
thinking.
Yeah. Like, who's gonna show up for the vote in November?
Right. All right, so I think that covers kind of the thoughts on the definitions too. So maybe just go to the list now. I think the only comment on number one really was adding the use of animals for recreational purposes in the other, along with the other uses that could involve it. That we only put it in recreation center, but skills venue could be dog sledding or whatever. So,
I'd just like to get some clarity in terms of, as it's written right now, if somebody wants to put horses, basically keep horses on their private property, do they have to meet the criteria that's in the planning board regulations? You're saying if or is it because they're horses for a sleigh ride, they're not agricultural and it doesn't come under that? So if that's the case, then we've got a problem. Because I don't think we want people just saying, well, I'm gonna open a sleigh ride, I can keep my horses over here. So I don't know.
Well, you
I
all
agree.
have to decide what's okay and what's not, and then I'll try to put some language to that.
But is this not included on this list because of the objection or the request that was made by the resort to maintain horses at the mountain for purposes such as sleigh rides?
No, at the mountain is not an issue. That's because the Forest Service won't let them do it. Right, so they want to keep them behind the conference center. That's where they want to keep the horses. And right now, the criteria reads 5 acres of land and you've got to meet GMPs for animals.
There was also a conversation under talking about number 2 of adding temporary stabling of animals, incorporating the state BMP. So those kind of tie together.
Right.
Basically, I need to know what you feel is okay and what's not, and I know what criteria, and then I can put the language in.
Well, I'm okay with the way it's written now, assuming that would give the planning board the authority, basically, in order to keep horses, you have to get a special exception. You have to go to the ZBA and get a special exception.
Well,
But what I heard in the meeting was, well, if their horse is used for a ride, that's not for agricultural
Correct.
uses, that's different.
yeah, it is different.
Well, then we ought to close that loophole. That's all we need to, that's my opinion. We ought to close that loophole so somebody can't just put horses behind the conference center.
Where's the room behind?
Well, I thought they had,
They-
don't they have an approved area?
And they then said they were gonna put them on Cantlin's property.
Right.
And which met the criteria of 5 acres, but I'm not sure they ever went and got approval from the ZBA.
They did, it was the horse owners
That
that
they,
got through.
in terms of how they're gonna take care of the animals.
Yes,
It was all.
And then the guy bailed out. I mean, he never came.
he got sick, there was some health issues.
Something. Yeah, as long as they meet that, I don't have any problem.
So do you want to use the word for recreational purposes? Or?
Well, I don't know. We ought to close that loophole down if we ought to allow,
Or
The
not
only
open
thing-
it up.
right.
You had asked that the recreation center definition make clear that it could include the use of animals. But what I'm hearing you say is, if it's horses, you don't want them stabled on anything less than 5 acres. Is that-
Well, if
But then
it's
they would
large
be asking that
animals,
there be
uh,
provisions for
our
temporary.
criteria was you need 5 acres of land, and you need to meet the GMPs. And if you do that, I'm fine with your boarding animals.
So supposedly here for 2 weeks for some holiday.
I got the same problem, all that, what the guy was doing in previous years was trucking the horses out of Canton.
And you
you know.
can keep doing that because it's hard on the horses.
Well, but it depends on what the rest of you want to do. I mean, if you want to allow horses for 2 weeks.
I understand both the reluctance to have manure piles near hotels
Mhm.
and the loss of not having horse-drawn carriages that ever sleighs during the winter. I mean, it's a huge loss for the aesthetics, for everything in the town. So it's a matter of can we have the GMPs applied? Can we use the whole conditional usage thing and allow a smaller yacht lot if it's recreational as long as the GMPs are applied and keep it conditional? Is there some creative way around it?
Do whatever you want. It depends the question of what you want to do. It was written to prevent people from keeping a cow.
So, yeah, agricultural,
Right.
you're not gonna ride a cat. Hopefully,
Well,
I don't know, maybe you are. Fucking Bronco, right?
Well,
It was asked by one of the people at the public hearing that you add temporary stabling of animals as a use to other uses and zones as well, incorporate in the state BMPs. So I was trying to find out what you want that to look like.
Whatever allows us to have sleigh rides on the big weeks.
yeah, perhaps you could specifically say sleigh rides or
I can,
hay rides.
just
or-
tell me what you want and I'll get put language to it, but
It
I
seems to
don't
be-
know.
Everybody seems
Yeah.
to be revolving around the
But what other
sleigh ride.
uses?
hay rides.
How about if it's dog sled?
Or recreation open to the public. I mean, we want it to be not just recreation for people who are, I don't know, students at BB, or what, I don't know. We want it something like an amenity.
Is the emphasis not temporary? That is, you wouldn't want those animals there permanently. You'd want them there temporarily for holiday purposes.
well, I don't have a problem with, if you want to do it, say temporarily would be defined as less than 8 weeks. Which would give them the whole ski season.
Mhm.
You know, and also could allow someone to, for an 8-week period in the summer, offer trail rides, which we used to have years ago.
But when you talk about the financials, is it realistic for someone to only do it for 8 weeks? And they have to figure out a way, but when you talk about the financials, is it realistic for someone to only do it for 8 weeks? And they have to figure out a way to set up the animals, bring in the equipment. I feel like 8 weeks is too short of an amount of time.
Well, as I understand it, the reason that we no longer have horses here is that it was a lose operation from day one. And they could never cover remotely their expenses of operating a stable. And I think the stable was torn down, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well. If we did limit it to temporary, if we did call out specific things such as horseback riding, that's allowable. Sleigh.
Or recreation, I don't even have a problem with it for recreational
Just say
purposes.
recreational purposes.
Yeah.
Limit it and they have to follow those BMPs.
GMPs, yeah.
Best management practices,
That's
it's BMPs, so,
They're defined by the state.
so I think you'd wanna put in subject to site plan review, so that would be your opportunity to make clear the best management practices were a condition of the approval.
That would give them what they need. Now, do we have to define temporary, or is temporary already defined somewhere? I think it is in the definitions.
I was going for the 8 weeks.
Well.
So, I mean, whatever I bring will be the starting point for your discussion in November.
Okay?
Will this ever end?
No.
So there were so many comments on number 2, I numbered them. I think that people were in agreement with allowing a caretaker or manager apartment. But I would think it's not just in the recreation zone, even though that was a comment, right? Would that be like pretty much every zone?
I think that makes sense. And
how about number 2?
I think we have to be careful about that from an issue that's come up before relative to the Snows Mountain Special District. Because we got into a pretty significant, somewhat of a fight with them over the fact that they were allowing that to happen. They had a caretaker that was staying there, and in lieu of paying them salary or something, and it just. So other places, you know, what Gary's asking for sounds reasonable, but we have to think about the implications on other, if we allow that on other parcels of property.
You mean Craig,
Right, yeah,
for the golf course?
Would
yeah.
it be a defining caretaker
You know,
or
I hate
manager
it.
apartment?
Right,
So you're saying there are cases.
staying during the summer when the kids weren't in school.
Right, it's using it for other than its
They're,
intended
right,
purpose.
So it became a residence.
It became a
it
residence.
became a residence.
Right.
But what you'd be doing is making that okay,
Yes,
If they're taking care of the property.
right? Yeah, you'd be
You
making
could
that
make
all
that
right.
argument.
How we would define that?
Well,
Taking care-
That'd be
if
like a
we could
landscape.
limit it to one per parcel.
That's
you
what
know,
I, yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I would.
Okay, that's a good idea.
Now, that's an accessory use.
Well, but in this case, just so that the golf course has this option available to it.
But it could make sense on some other businesses in some other districts
Yes.
too.
Would it, now, the other thing is on LDR, low density, we do not allow right now a secondary apartment. And would this open the door for that?
No, you don't, not sure you really have anything there that, I mean, you do, you allow 2-family residential unit. You allow an accessory apartment already in LDR.
Accessory,
You allow an accessory dwelling unit in LDR. Or, I mean, you have to under state law. So you kind of covered it in the residential districts anyway. I was thinking about the business district.
Okay, yeah, I would not, I'm trying to think why we'd want to do this in HDR and LDR. And I can't come up with a really good reason why you want to allow that.
No, I mean, under state law, you have to allow an accessory.
With a really good reason why you want to allow that.
No, I mean, under state law, you have to allow an accessory dwelling unit
Yes,
with a single
right.
family home anyway.
Yeah.
But this is at letting you have one with a business in other districts.
So you're saying recreation, DC, C1? I don't know, special civic, there's no, any kind of.
Well, you gotta consider the fact that the
Recreation
sports center is
sports
on special
facility.
civic zone property.
Yeah, I would have thought that and Snows as well, when I look at the uses.
Okay.
So how about number 2? There was a suggestion to add accessory dwellings above the ground floor in special civic and recreation. And I think again, the example would be over a recreation center or a sports facility.
I think that opens the possibility, and I'm not saying it's wrong, of somebody constructing, starting, dwelling units on rec land.
I thought that was a good point in the first letter that you read, the long one. I hadn't really thought around that corner that somebody could build, not really having tenants for the ground floor, just to get that residential land value. I think there's an argument for leaving it the way it is. Leaving it the way you proposed.
Well, there was plenty of discussion in the beginning to come up with the first place, so. I'm gonna leave it, that's fine.
Okay, so we'll. Yeah, number 3 wasn't really a change, I guess, but it was a long part of the conversation that I wanted to capture. And I can't say I really understood the condo hotel versus hotel condos, even though I went home and Googled it.
Yes,
I didn't quite get that.
I did the same, and
I mean, I understand that the model now, because I've, you know, worked on the Boston's project for a few years, that the model is to not build the hotel, but build to sell the units. And then I come up and use mine 2 weeks and it's rented out by a hotel desk-like clerk the rest of the time. I get that that's become the model, but the other that he was saying, I didn't understand.
I wonder if in a condo hotel, all the units have to be part of a rental program like that. In the hotel condos, they don't necessarily have to be.
My takeaway was to reread our definitions and lists and just make sure that we've allowed flexibility.
If we're going to do that, I would suggest that you take a look at the definitions we have right now for multifamily house, multifamily dwellings, and hotel.
Yep,
And I'm confused when I read, because I tried to figure out which was the golden eagle. Is it a multifamily dwelling or is it a hotel? And it's not at all clear to me.
yeah, that's the conversation we had the first time I met with you guys about all this, when you explained to me that, no, they're just not in clear lines here. That
Right.
there are people that live in hotels. So that
well,
that makes it tough, but again, you want to make sure that you want to make sure there's the gray area in your definition, so you
Right.
continue to allow that flexibility, right? You don't usually hear me advocate gray area in definitions, but I think this is one case where
Well, it only becomes a problem if you're going to say multifamily homes are not, and multifamily dwellings are not allowed in C1 property.
Yeah.
Then it becomes a real issue,
Right.
if the definition of hotel covers something like the golden eagle.
I know, that's why
I'm not at all clear that it would.
that's why I made a note to relook at that and make sure that
Right.
you're allowing that kind of flexibility.
but I think their practice is that they run it as a hotel, but they've sold rooms within the hotel as condominium property.
Right.
That there are people who own rooms in the hotel as their own property.
Yeah,
That's all it is.
all 100% is
Yeah.
owned by individuals. It's a condominium.
But apparently, there's some people that it's their year-round, their primary residence.
Right.
Yes.
That's what I
Yeah.
didn't understand when I first came. So, yeah, we want to make sure the definitions are flexible. So we dealt with number 4 and I think number 5 for now. Number 6 was, Bill raised the question of why do you want to have a minimum size for the PUD? You're making the minimum size smaller, but he was asking, do you need a minimum size at all? I kind of think you do, because the whole idea of the PUD is you're looking at a more comprehensive plan than just
Mhm.
one building. If it can be tiny, then you're really just saying you're not going to have any setbacks. The PUD lets you waive setbacks and whatnot, but
And I think that was his point, right, as a way to get around having to have setbacks.
yeah. I mean, I think it makes sense what you were saying, to look at the setbacks in a more in a comprehensive way next year. I mean, we can take some measurements and see what different setbacks are out there and what it looks and feels like. That's really the right way to do setback.
To some extent, I think that the thing on PUDs is a function of the type of land. We allow PUDs, for instance, on residential. There, the 2 acres may make a lot of sense. I mean, but it may make less sense if you get over the village commercial and the rest.
We dropped it to 1 acre.
Did we drop it to 1
We
acre?
dropped it to 1 acre in one of those. Or was it, let me look. 1 acre in the VC and
You said 1
C1.
acre in VC.
Your amendments proposed to drop it to 1 acre instead of 2 in the VC and C1. And leave it for 2 acres in the LDR and H2. I think that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a, around me.
How about the daycare? That's something that you had kind of some mixed feelings about anyway. But whether they need to be, accessory in the BC and C1. Seemed like there were several people at public hearing, advocating for that to be a permitted use.
Yeah, I could definitely see it being permitted in BC and rec. I'm still uncertain about C1. Yeah, it's strictly daycare, with like, 3-year-olds running around keeping them safe.
Well, I think it could make sense, right? I mean, if the, village square really grows out and that you have a high density of, employees there. I mean, they're gonna want their kids to be as close to them as possible, right? So at lunchtime they can go there, kind of like, a hospital or, pretty much any company these days. So I don't know if it's kids running around, outside as much. If you think about it, it'd be mostly indoor, like, daycare for 3 and under, type of thing.
What about special exception?
It's good.
If a site may be okay, but maybe not, then why not? That's really what a special exception. Yeah. Accessory / special exception.
And the developers really thought it was really a needed thing.
Well, I think they would think it would be very beneficial if somebody wanted to do it. We shouldn't discourage them by creating a daycare facility.
What's the reason to allow it in rec? I'm not following why it would be permitted in
As
rec.
an accessory,
No, accessory I get, but
as a
why permitted in rec?
Because in theory, recreational.
Somebody mentioned camps or something like
Yeah.
that. Isn't it like a camp for kids, wouldn't that be? Couldn't you set up a daycare to be a camp or something?
Yeah, I guess, okay.
Wasn't the emphasis for the benefit of employees?
Then it's accessory really. Yeah,
It's actually some of the camps today are considered summer daycare. And not young daycare, right? But, for like so the parents can go up, climb the mountains and they use the rest.
But perhaps special exception in commercials that we put.
yeah. Probably makes sense to talk about number 8 along with amendment number 7. Because I think his main concern about the contractor yard and storage facilities has to do with that lot that's proposed not to be BC anymore.
I don't see a real problem in putting storage facilities in special civic, which addresses one of the issues, because the way it's defined in the definition is it's open to the public. And special civic is supposed to enhance those uses that are good for the public, basically.
Now, he had originally proposed, he
And-
came in with a plan to build garages, then,
Garages and storage, yeah. Storage garages, I think is what it is.
storage garage,
Yeah.
right? Why, would they be allowed?
Well, yeah, it's open to the public. In other words, someone can come in and buy that garage. And there is a need for storage around the valley. I think I understand that. So, I mean, just look at the value of the garages that are over there by the Stone property.
I think Bill's point was, why are we changing this?
Yes.
Give me a reason why it's necessary to change this.
That
From-
particular
So
lot.
you
From
don't-
BC to,
So you don't have the drive-through McDonald's or
So we don't have an odd shaped piece of, we don't have an odd.
you don't have something dragging commercial retail out of the village center. But
Well, but nobody wants this stuff in the village center.
that's why I thought it might make, that's why I threw out there the idea of changing it to special civic and then allowing both of those things in special civic. Because they're kind of more the land intensive kind of uses around the village.
Yeah, there were only a couple things that were of concern. One of them was the storage facility, the other one was the contractor's,
Contract
Yeah.
yard.
So if you made it special civic and made those be allowed in special civic, the
contractor, yeah, doesn't really meet the criteria for special civic, but I suppose if you really stretched it and said, well, the public needs, landscaping
Like, you need
and,
ice on the road.
and maintenance.
Salt on the road.
Yeah, I mean, you really could make it in the public interest.
I mean, I think his point was good that there are uses you need somewhere, and if you don't want them in the village, where do you want them? And I looked at his own app and said, well, the special civic is kind of these odd pieces around the village area.
And there is a need for contractor area. It's been, we've struggled with it before.
Yeah.
So I don't think he's wrong in saying that, where are you gonna put these things? Allow them somewhere.
Right.
I think his concern was that by changing the zoning from VC to special civic, you were lessening the value of the property because there was less one could do in
Right.
special civic than in VC.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's also a concern.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
you're
I think
diminishing the value of the
right
property.
after that.
Zoning changes always have winners and losers, and it doesn't
Mhm.
make it a taking.
But it does, the uses between the two are very similar. And for the most part, interchangeable, but there are a few under the business. And one of them is storage and one of them is contract that is allowed in VC, it's not allowed in special civic at this point. But
Right, so
by
if you,
making those allowed.
right, so if you made that allowed,
Yeah.
that might ease his concern about that lot anyway.
I don't think it's a very good spot to put in kind of a retail. So I don't think, that's a big concern.
Maybe not, but I mean, it is on the road that goes to and from the mountain. You could see a convenience store, whatever, a gas station, I don't know.
But I think that's from a land use planning point of view,
Yeah.
and what your
Yeah,
whole goal
Yeah,
was,
we did.
that's not something you wanna do. You want people out to drive.
Does that property, I don't know, have access to 49?
Yeah,
That's
Triple
lot.
Triple
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 Yeah.
A.
Triple I
It's right,
road.
it's
Yeah.
right along Triple I.
Yeah, I mean, you go on. I mean, would I object if somebody wanted to build a gas station there? No.
I would.
Yeah. It'd be nice to have a gas here again. Now, I don't think it's ever gonna happen, but,
But that was his point, again, that we were limiting what can be done with that property.
right.
There's special civic allowed gas station.
That's your goal.
Somebody's selling, let's
that is the
get
goal.
realistic.
That is your goal.
Somebody's selling,
Yeah.
ski gear,
We don't want it there.
rental.
We don't want it.
Why
there.
not?
We want to go down where? Where they may
They're
stop
on their
in
way
for
to
a
the
bite to
mountain.
eat.
Might be more
I mean,
convenient.
it'd
Yeah, no,
be
we wanna
more
get 'em in-
efficient to have somebody stop on their way to the mountain. Would you want them running from downtown?
We put picnic tables up by the lagoon.
That's true.
But that's what your whole aim was,
These are
to make people have to drive into the village center for their
Yeah.
retail services.
Then they'd see the aerial tram and they wouldn't have to drive it.
Yeah, there we go.
No, I mean, that was it. That was the
Yeah.
little
Yeah, no,
pieces
I know, right.
and keep it,
Well,
so.
What I remember is that we decided or we proposed to change the zoning simply to make the map more
That was the other
consistent.
part of it.
Right.
That's what it was.
And what
That's
the
his
reason we've done it.
interpretation was that we were trying to zone him down in value. He even
Right.
went as far as to say that he thought that the town wanted to buy that property.
Right. Right, where was,
At a- at a
what's the
distressed
price
price.
reduction
That's
so the
right.
town could buy
He
it, right?
had to push him out.
Right, to push them out.
What will we do with it?
Well,
Where we get the money.
look, that,
Yeah, that too.
it's merely a point that
Yeah.
we don't
That's
want to
reasonable.
do that. We don't want to restrict his use or force his value down. So
Well-
either we don't make the change or we tell him that he could do these things that he wants.
No, and
No, but that's
Fine.
a special, that's
Well, you
creating a-
are
restricting it.
changing property
Thank you.
value
Yeah.
whenever you make zoning changes.
Okay.
That's part of
Right.
making zoning changes.
He is right.
It increases some, it decreases others. That's
Right, but,
just the back
but
of
the
it.
question is the rationale for us making that change. You know, and I thought it was just to clean up the map.
No,
Yes.
it's to further your pedestrian plan and your master plan.
So it's to prevent somebody from building a retail operation down there.
Yeah,
That's the reason.
Pretty much.
yeah.
I changed special civics to only something that can be done.
Now, if someone were to come in with like this whiz bang idea that was technically not allowed in special civic, how much latitude does the planning board have to say it could go there?
None.
That would just be zoning board, special exception, or not even that?
You have to go change the zoning again, really.
If they change the zoning.
If you just couldn't make the argument that it fit into any of those categories.
But we could fit in a maintenance yard in special civic.
Well, if we change that and add it, facilities for construction equipment, add that to special civic
Civic.
permitted and storage facilities.
And does that open up that sort of, use of property in other special civic zones?
I don't look at the map, it seemed okay.
Yes, the answer is yes, but not
Not-
likely
we're not
that
worried.
the sports center,
Looked okay.
Well, they have a
Yeah,
big
they-
chunk of property there.
you know, a storage facility next to it.
They're
Well,
big,
yeah.
if they're all kind of around the village center.
Right.
Those odd pieces, they seem like better places than the village center.
And speaking of gas stations, do we have them listed as a use, or does it need to be?
I think we basically described it as retail, right?
Oh, okay, sure.
Was it already set on that to add those two uses? to special
Just so you know, I'm not in favor of doing that. I don't understand why we're changing this property, other than we're just changing it. I can't, the fact that we're trying to come up with a rationale that says we don't want retail built down there is, to me, it depends on the retail. And, so I would not be in favor of making this change, but that doesn't mean that everyone else is, and we ought to go forward.
Well, how do people feel about Amendment 7 by now, which is that law, changing it from village commercial to special civic? Haven't heard the public hearing and how do people feel about that?
I could see leaving it as a VC. But, I don't know.
I thought we were trying to make these adhere to our master plan, which is like, no, we do want retail there. We want to live in the village
Right,
or town square.
I can see that too. I can see that.
That's no, we don't want retail.
Okay. I
That's why
do-
we're doing it.
I'm more like empathetic toward the landowner's objections. That by doing this change, for not a really strong reason, in my opinion, for the planning board, making a zone change which has significant impact on him.
Well, except we're now making the zoning fit our master plan, which is our job.
Okay, I
I mean,
think that it's unnecessary restriction on the landowner.
As it
When we
stands,
developed the master plan 10 years ago, or 8 years ago, I didn't hear at any point in time anybody thought that it needed to change then to conform to the master plan.
It was different though at the time, because there was a large area of
Yeah.
VC, and we changed a lot of that VC area to special civic, which is where we are right now. And it kind of left that little piece off, split off.
Yeah, there had been much more VC.
Yeah, there was, this whole area down there was,
Well, we changed a lot of VC to C1.
and I think this was changed to special civic.
This,
Here's the map.
This figure.
Yeah, it is special. The town bought it, basically, right?
Yeah, it was BC before.
Well, the town bought the gas station,
Right.
right, and I don't know what that is.
But see, this whole area down here basically was VC. It was changed in the middle of it to special civic, which left this piece kind of hanging out here.
Right.
And that's, now it looks like a kind of off the beaten path, no one knows why it's VC up there.
The other thing to consider too is that, like on the other side of the road,
Yeah.
as VC, unless we make the change that's been proposed to prohibit single-family homes and duplexes on VC, that would further limit the value, potentially, the use of this, I want to say value, because I don't know if we have, the use of what uses you can make of that property.
Because on number 8,
Well, no, I'm talking about,
It's all connected. If you decide not to make it special civic, then you need to look again at the uses, your
Right.
use changes in village commercial, because that's his next.
I'm looking at the side that's to the east of Triple I Road, just that parcel there. That's what we're talking about.
The roads, and the one across the road,
Yes.
Yeah,
Across
Yeah.
the road, there's a,
right, there's a house there and a
Yes.
lot.
no,
right?
that's to the west.
No, you're talking about number 7.
Yep, talk about number 7, yeah.
Okay,
I'm saying if we keep it as village commercial, we do have our proposal to prohibit single-family homes and duplexes on village commercial. I'm just pointing that out.
right,
So the value of this property is still gonna be impinged potentially. We are restricting the use of that property,
Yeah.
whether we, that's how I'm trying, right.
Single family home that would be.
yeah.
No?
You never know. I mean, you don't know.
Now with the traffic coming through there, the dump, I don't know.
I agree, but
but
I'm not proposing or deciding one way or the other. I'm just trying to lay out just a different.
So how important is it to consolidate as best we can the different zones? And eliminate the outliers.
But I just like to again point out what Nancy was saying, which was that it's not just a question of consolidation, it's a question of keeping commercial development in a certain area, that is towards town square and away from the periphery. So I mean, it's when you say just to consolidate,
except that
sounds
we
somewhat
wouldn't want,
arbitrary.
we want all commercial development down there, right? We don't want a storage area, and we don't want a maintenance yard.
Those we want outside. That's where, I mean, that's what we were trying to
Right.
turn this into, a special.
But
civic.
somebody could certainly go into DC land and build the storage facility and a maintenance yard.
Well, your proposal makes storage facilities accessory in DC and construction yards special exception in DC. That was his other objection.
Yeah.
So you kind of be, making it easier for him to do those things if you change it to special civic and make those permitted.
One reasonable retail use for that property though is a gas station. I wonder if there's any way that they, just that particular thing would be allowed there. The special civic.
Allow gas stations and special civic.
Beneficial to the population as a whole. We do allow arts and crafts things. I wonder if we could do that. But then again, we don't list gas station anywhere, right?
No,
But
you could specifically list gas
you
stations.
could carve it out and decide where you want it.
Now, would you allow a gas station plus a little mini
Convenience.
I would think
convenience
so.
store?
I would think so.
these days you have to.
I don't know if we'd ever fly, I mean, it didn't operate well because they had to use up all the fuel that was in the tank, they couldn't,
No, it could
Vary
not,
the price.
the reason it couldn't operate well was that they couldn't find a contractor. They couldn't find a gas company that would come and deliver gas.
Hmm.
There was not enough volume.
Yeah, not enough volume and not on their way to Rome.
Right,
Yeah.
so they said, we're out of here, we're done. Otherwise, they'd still be in, there were people living there that operated.
Yeah.
But they couldn't get the gasoline.
well, didn't pay enough for the gas. But if something like the resort area decided, you know, that would be kind of a health ski area, they might decide to put one in there themselves and take the loss on it.
I think they've already got a commercial one, right? They've already storing diesel fuel and the rest up in the
Yeah.
mountain, and we're storing gasoline over by the lagoons.
Somebody can come in here with the fuel, anyway, obviously.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking. So somebody's coming and filling your storage tank.
Now, if you build an aerial tramway, who wants a gas station there?
Right, there you go.
I won't be going over there.
Somebody who ran out of gas.
Yeah.
That's right, tramway right
So-
now, yes, yeah.
For the purposes of moving forward, do you want to leave it as, changing it to special civic and adding the maintenance yard to it, and then we vote on it in November?
Well, you'd have to, I think you should add storage facilities.
That's what I meant. I meant
And
maintenance yard and storage facility.
I wasn't sure that that's the way you were leaning.
Well, no, I'm just wondering which way are we leaning? Just leaving it alone?
Well, there seems to be split down the middle here.
Yeah.
Got time to think
I'm
about
not
it.
sure there's consensus on this.
Yeah, Rob is suspiciously quiet. He could hold a key vote.
I think you need to kind of figure out what you want because, like, today, because if you're not gonna change it to special civic and add those, then you need to look again at those uses in BC, because that was Bill's other argument, was you're making storage facilities accessory in BC and construction yards special exception in BC.
And right now, they are both.
I don't know, I'd have to look. I don't know if that changed chart in front of me. They must have been permitted from
Yeah,
what he was
okay.
saying.
Right, and we have one. I mean, the Stone Property
Yeah.
Management is a single parcel
The only
that's
one.
basically a maintenance yard.
The only one.
And it's a valid point that we don't wanna drive it out of town.
Well,
Which is right.
you wouldn't, I mean, they'd be grandfathered, but.
No, but I mean.
So we have,
But you're not allowing them. You have
Yes.
storage facilities as accessory and contractor yards as special exception. in
we have,
BC.
SC, facilities for construction equipment, motor freight terminals, contractors yards, maintenance facilities, rental car services, and building supply yards. It's SC and BC.
All right,
That's it. That's all I see anyway. Page 4. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the changes.
what is it now?
So that was, oh, yeah. That was,
So right now it's allowed, it's permitted.
Right,
so turning all of it into SC.
Or just another spot where we use the conditional use.
I'm not seeing storage facilities. Storage facilities were already accessory.
Now they
Construction equipment it would be changing from permitted to special exception. And I don't think it work, I don't think it fits the criteria well for conditional use. Because it's not a really a special use, like in the same way a PUD or the RAM. We had to make that argument. So you're not changing storage facilities, that's already accessory and. It's already accessory in BC, but you're changing contract yard from permitted to special exception.
Could you just add a gas station to that list right there? Facilities of construction.
To which,
We have it on the
Oh, I was
BC,
thinking that, yeah, that's in DC.
on the new table.
Yeah, hold on. I just want to look at how we define retail. So what you're thinking of doing is pulling gas stations out of retail and giving them their own, and then where do you want them and what?
Under uses, okay, commercial, then the next bit.
Yeah,
is
but I
uses.
meant what district?
VC is what,
Would that be a special exception?
that's what you're saying, is that right, Terry?
Well, I was thinking more in terms of if it was changed to special civic.
Oh,
We were going to add construction yards, we were going to add storage facilities, and we were going to add gas stations.
right, but I think
my
what we're
question
looking at,
is
if we
if-
don't do that,
My question is,
Right.
if you're gonna pull gas stations out as
Right.
their own thing, where else do you want them? Do you want a special exception in BC and C1, for example? Or permitted? They be permitted in all three of those?
I mean, we have rental car services. A special exception. In BC.
Yeah, I would permit it. I think. Yeah. So the thing is, regardless, if you put out of the picture for the moment, what it does to the value of that piece of property, which isn't insignificant, and I think it has to be considered at one point, but the question is it in the best interest of the town to change that piece from special civic to, I mean, from BC to special civic? That number 7 as is now proposed. One argument is that it puts the commercial things supposedly where we would like to have them near the center of town. Promotes the pedestrian village type situation and just plain makes the map better. And the bad thing for the town I guess maybe it lessens the value of that property. That's so the tax might be less.
We're potentially losing the opportunity of the developer who might want to do something there that would be really beneficial.
Right, it's the unknown retail that's is the potential loss. You know, somebody who has a bright idea of, because I can get access to the mountain road, I can do something there that, I don't know what it is. It's tomorrow, it's not today.
One thing we haven't ever brought up in this whole process, and that is the variance. Is a situation like that, could it be handled with a variance guide?
Shouldn't be. It shouldn't be, no, variance should only be, the zoning doesn't allow you to make any use of your property without the variance. Not just, you can't do what you want.
So is there any way that if there's not a use listed on a particular piece of property, someone comes in, wants to put in a use there that's not acceptable to, who does he appeal to? Does he appeal originally to the planning board?
If it's not allowed, it's not allowed. If they can make the argument that one of these definitions should cover,
It has to try to fit into one. of
then,
the
and they
definitions.
didn't get their permit when they should have, because it should be considered one of these categories, then they can appeal that to the zoning board. But they'd have to be able to make that argument.
I find myself wanting to change the zone to special civic and then take all the stuff that's allowed in the village commercial and put it in special civic.
Civic, yeah.
Solve my problem.
Well, I think one of the reasons that we have this dilemma is that we were trying to consider the goodwill of the principal landowner of the town. That is, if we say, we don't care, about your problems or your concerns, we're gonna change the zone. I think that we push away the goodwill of the Waterville company.
Well, it's more than that, though. I mean, yes, it's the goodwill, but it's also bringing a valid point from the other perspective. No matter who owns that property, if it could be used for something that could be beneficial, that we're limiting for not a good enough reason.
Mhm.
then we should be doing.
Now, when I read the description, general description of the special civic, it has a statement that I don't know what the heck's name it means. But it basically says it's to allow facility or service development beneficial to the community as a whole. Any development proposed must be approved by submitting plans to the planning board for final approval by the selectmen. What the hell does that mean?
Pretty sure we proposed to take that out.
Yeah.
Oh, we did? Oh, good.
I mean,
I mean, because it's.
That's proposed to come out.
Basically,
Yeah,
it's kind of open-ended.
that's going away.
All right.
That's part of Amendment 2. You're just gonna have the table of uses, not these narratives.
Well,
Well, it sounds like you're leaning more toward getting rid of that. Getting rid of Amendment 7. That's what I'm hearing more leaning toward.
I think the argument is weak. I picture myself sitting down across the table from somebody and explaining why it is that we change that. I don't think it's a strong argument.
So, let's stay with those and then circle back to the uses and the VC. Do you feel the same way about 8 and 9 then?
Well, 8 is
8
already,
was the,
Across the street?
yeah, that's, that
it's a
little piece.
residential.
We're gonna change that to LDR, right?
Yeah,
Which is on the
that's okay with, that seems to make sense to me.
Nobody came or commented.
Right.
No, I mean, the one property.
I'm not even
across there is
sure,
LDR anyway,
are there 2 lots there?
I see 2 lots, yes.
Yeah,
Two
2
remaining
lots, one
lots,
of them is.
one with a house and
One
one
with
in
a
the
house and one
And the
on
other is vacant right now?
what it looks like to me in this map here.
Not says like,
Yeah, that's your assessors data.
sure looks like LDR.
Yeah.
What about number 9?
That was that little,
2 little lots,
2
one
little
with the
lots.
fallen thing on it. and
What
one
I
without.
heard was the condo people could care less about.
ever expanding.
Right, they would have no use for that. And it was, and likewise, I don't know, and so giving it to the condo is making it a high density, is someone's gonna have to pick the taxes up in that darn thing. What I've heard is its only value potentially is if the telephone company went away.
They combine the lots and.
Maybe you could, even though they're still pretty small, right?
Yeah,
Again, it's another one where it's hard to find a strong reason to change it.
Right,
And on the other hand, Catlin suggested that they be a town reception kiosk on this corner
right.
as a means of.
Oh, I'm sure he'd sell it to the town.
Well, they said, or a drive-through pizza place.
Well,
that's what I did want.
I didn't miss that.
Well,
I think that was meant in
Right.
jest, but at least I
Oh,
hope
I
so.
don't know.
I don't know, sell it to anybody.
No, he'd sell it to anybody.
Yeah,
Of course,
good,
no doubt
that's
about
his
that.
job.
Yeah,
His job is to get the highest and best use for all of his land.
right.
Right. So it sounds like you're getting rid of 7 and 9, but keeping 8 then, right?
I think so.
Right. So then we have to talk about contract the yards and storage facilities in VC. That means you're still leaving him with that concern. Where the proposal is, so we back those back on a special civic, right? We're not,
Yes.
we don't need to add those to special civic. We don't need to add a gas station category.
No.
What you do need to talk about, storage facilities being an accessory in DC, which is as it is now, you're not proposing a change, but he'd like it changed to permitted. And contractor yards, you are
So
proposing that
that-
go from permitted to special exception.
So to make it an accessory use, they'd have to be, whatever lot they propose to do on it, they would have to, it would literally have to be a secondary purpose.
Like lockers for the condo owner with the condo. That's how I'd see accessory.
Wasn't that how it was handled here with, between the garage and the storage? It seemed to me that you had to make one accessory to the other. Because it didn't fit into the zone or something like that. I seem to remember there was some sort of conflict
You
about
mean
the storage facilities, the close where we did.
well, it was questionable whether,
Yeah.
that was an allowed use or not.
Because you call it, right now, it's an accessory use under your current
Right.
zoning.
And
So
he
it has to
wanted
be
to make it a
accessory to
primary
something.
use. And, because he wasn't proposing to do anything else there.
But wasn't he gonna do garages and then he made the storage accessory? Wasn't it something like that?
I really can't remember.
Well, how do you feel about storage lockers as a permitted in the DC?
I don't have any problem with it. I think the only reason people don't want it as a primary is because of the space requirement.
So you'd keep it accessory in commercial for that reason. You don't want it sucking up building in commercial. But make it permitted in DC. That's what he's asking. It's accessory now, and you propose to leave it that way.
Where is it generally, where, if it's an accessory in DC, where is it allowed?
Not nowhere. Right now, you just have an accessory in C1 and accessory in
So
VC,
basically, nobody can really build a storage area.
not as a primary use.
Yeah, I think part of that was probably at the time the zoning was written. That concept never, didn't exist.
Well, you have it as an accessory use in the zoning now.
We do.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so it is.
In
an-
DC.
At VC and C1.
So we have to change the storage.
You're not proposing a change in that. I didn't look at C1.
No.
VC,
He was proposing a change.
What does
Correct.
Cantlin want then? Does he want a
Right,
principal
yeah.
use?
I think the bigger concern then was the construction equipment, contractor yard, et cetera. That was the bigger issue, right?
wait 1 second.
And that's now a special exception.
So it's not, I think it wasn't listed at all in C1, and you were proposing to add it as an accessory use like it is now in VC. But it wasn't permitted anywhere. So do you want it permitted in VC?
I thought it was, I thought facilities for construction equipment
No,
was.
storage.
We're talking about
permitted in
storage
DC.
facilities
Storage.
still.
Storage facilities, okay.
So we've broadened that to accessory in C1. Right, so. that looks good to me.
I don't think it's a bad idea for the town to have an area where, like, you have storage facilities. It's a primary.
It's just a matter, it's the, I think the discussion had that been large.
Yeah.
Well, maybe special civic makes sense for that then, does it? Maybe.
I think so.
Or are those all kind of town owned right now?
Not all.
No,
It's
or the recreate, or the athletic club.
The athletic club is a special civic.
It makes a lot of sense for these storage facilities, yards, et cetera, to be in this corner lot over here.
That's gonna stay VC though.
Right.
Yeah. But
So
it
right
wouldn't
now
make
it could,
sense when
It
you look at the map where the other VC lots are. They wouldn't make sense to put those things there.
Unless they're accessory.
Okay.
They're-
Like you wouldn't want them across the street from Portland Pond.
it was pretty ugly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's,
Very ugly.
yeah.
I used to own it. Pardon me.
I'm sure yours was the exception.
I mean, you could think of the golf courses storage area and maintenance area.
Yeah.
And the argument that some have made is that we allowed one of the prettiest views in the valley to be spoiled by not paying a better attention to what the intention of that was when we agreed, not us, but the previous board agreed to have that there.
Cut this view by 20%, improve this view by
Yeah.
80%.
It wasn't supposed to be what it turned out to be, I think, was the.
It's supposed to be better
You're
screen.
talking about the trailer?
Yeah, well, his whole, that whole
Right.
area there in the
The
corner.
service yard for the golf course.
Right.
But, I mean, you're gonna have businesses that will need to have storage,
Right.
period.
If he had a, green wall, and he had trees in the block.
Well, I'm not, I can't remember that agreement, but that agreement is more to it than what he initially built. He's got so much time, he's gotta do something, right? And, I mean, the argument there is, it's necessary to the, it's just necessary
Yeah,
to
it's
the run of the
accessory
golf
to the-
course,
Yeah,
right? I mean,
Where else is he gonna put it?
But
Yeah.
that's not what this is. This
We're
is
talking
storage
about-
lockers
Right.
for the public.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what this use is.
They are ugly, but the planning board could require screening. I mean, the whole thing about them is that typically they're built so that they have orange doors and all kinds of flashy stuff, so that you see them from the highway. That's why they're ugly.
And chain link fence.
Yeah, chain link fence, but that, you could probably eliminate that situation here. I mean, it doesn't really need that much visibility and so forth. The planning board could have control over that. But they need it. They really are. People have to travel all the way to Plymouth now to store that stuff.
So do you want them permitted in the VC instead of accessory?
People have too much stuff.
I would.
Can you segregate that one corner that we're talking about
No,
over here?
no.
Spot.
Then you, yeah,
Yeah,
then you
that
really
could
ask
be
what
created
zoning.
as a new zone,
Yeah.
yeah.
It seems like if we're permitting that, then, I don't know about motor freight terminals, but the one below. This
Well, they
construct
agreed to
is
take
all
motor
very-
freight terminals out.
But all that other stuff is very similar in my mind to storage facilities, so then that shall be permitted too. As far as aesthetics,
Has to be permitted somewhere.
right?
You don't want to use up the commercial C1 space.
Well, you have that special exception in DC under your proposal.
That's reasonable.
But the argument was that, I mean, that's what we went round and round so much about it from the hearing, was that SC is not seen as reasonable,
Not that it's-
or by.
Have to leave it to the good judgment of the developer not to use more valuable land for something like a storage yard or a storage facility.
Yeah, I think the town makes a mistake by trying to get involved too much in how things develop. I mean, the developer does have certain
So then what,
cognizance as to what works and what doesn't work.
Right, the reason that doesn't happen now is the value of the land is too high to justify having that kind of facility in this valley.
That's it.
But if you're saying storage lockers are needed, then you know, what districts and do you want it to be permitted or a special exception? And
Well,
I'm not
they are
really
needed.
following the special exception on storage lockers, because I think that is more of a site plan issue, you asking for screening and what colors.
the ones we have now, the garages, are in LDR and HDR. It's in, it says
They're actually in,
HDR.
they're actually in village commercial.
They're in village commercial,
Yeah.
the garage.
So
And are
that's-
they accessory to something?
It's around
The
where
garages are-
it comes a road that we're.
Yeah, that's all village commercial, Forest Knoll.
That's not where the garages are. Garages are in.
Oh, not sorry, you're right, you're right.
HDR.
They're in HDR. They're right up against
HDR.
the next one over.
That's Will's new place.
Right. That's what I was thinking. I'm sorry, you said garages. I was thinking of
Yeah.
Will's place.
So they're in HDR.
They are in
must
HDR.
have- They're accessory to some other set of townhouses or?
But they've done well.
They've been
You don't
there
see them
forever.
on the road. they're-
Oh, yeah. Oh, there's
They're
demand
fine.
for them.
Yes, there is.
Yeah, well, they're pretty expensive.
Yeah. Because it's not nothing.
It's sold as a house.
I'd make it permitted in DC. DC is kind of the natural place to put it. And I would make it permitted because I think you're right, Tyler, that planning board, we have the ability to tell them what we want. We obviously don't have the ability to make them do it. But, it can be done. It can be done quite tastefully, actually. The garages themselves aren't much to look at, but you can't see them from anywhere.
And leave contractor yard special exception in BC.
Why? I mean, in my mind, they're very similar in aesthetics and development.
And they're quite necessary. I mean,
Yeah.
you
But
gotta
are they
have to
really
let-
similar in aesthetics?
I think they're
Contractors
different
are?
in terms of impact,
Yeah.
safety and noise.
Yeah, I was gonna say noise.
I think with safety and noise, you do want the zoning board to say whether it's an appropriate site.
Is there somewhere where we would just allow them though? Because, I mean, it is a valid point that having to go out of town for things that would come from a contractor yard makes it much more difficult.
Well, they're a special exception in BC right now.
Or we're proposing to change it. to
Right,
special.
right. But I mean, in that sense, they are allowed.
Does it make sense to have them permitted in a special civic?
Possibly.
If it made sense when you were talking about changing this to special civic, maybe it still does,
So a contractor yard around the lagoon makes sense.
as well as the storage lockers maybe.
Wouldn't make sense at the athletic club.
Why not add, when you were talking about making them permitted, both of those uses, when you were talking about making that special civic, so why not anyway?
Yeah.
You can tell me in November. why not.
I think it's permitted in special
Do that
civic.
for now.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get on with the list. We're still on amendment number 2, kinda. Somebody asked a question about your camps for recreational instruction accessory in the VC. I thought that made sense. Does everyone else think that makes sense? From a planning perspective, it makes.
Well, they've periodically held them. That's all I can say. I mean, it makes sense.
I mean, a camp is land intensive, so I think that's the idea to not have it permitted, but have it be associated with another use.
Well, what's happened in the past is Cantlin lets them use the land, under some agreement. And that's how you're right. If you had to buy the land, you wouldn't do it. But there was a camp for, I don't know, there was like an old sports camp here for a while. And he pretty much just had agreements to use people's land.
Look at REI.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's
Using
that's
everybody's
all
land.
on Campbell's property, right? I think it does make sense, given the nature of the recreational nature of this valley, to allow those kinds of things to occur on village commercial as well as C1 property.
But maybe what you're talking about can fall into the new category of special recreational and entertainment events.
Well,
As opposed
either
to
one.
building a camp,
Sure.
right?
I didn't think of it physically as constructing a camp. I always thought of it as, you were holding archery out there.
Yeah, I think the new category covers that. And this could stay more clear that it's associated with something else. If you're building a camp, just to build a camp, it's gotta be in the special civic rec or snow.
Do we have a definition of camp?
Probably not. Camp for recreational instruction seems to define it.
In other words, it's not a permanent facility.
Right. I
Well,
think if you inserted more,
Can be.
you know, the thought of more like a tennis camp and a golf camp, and, you know, that you would give lessons in tennis and golf, and that'd be
Oh,
allowed.
I was thinking of, like, the camp I went to as a little boy,
No.
that type of camp.
Right, and
That's
those,
just
and,
Buildings.
Yeah,
and those could be permitted in the SC rec and snow.
because we've carved out sort of like the tennis camps and the.
Well, it
Right, I think it's
originally,
fun the way
there was a
it is.
thought that the chunk of land that's owned by the academy, that they would develop into a multi-sports, you know, not just skiing, but in the summer would have other sports or something, and they'd allow, you know, if they ever built a dormitory, they could have people stay there and all of that stuff.
Well, you put recreation centers and sports facilities, I mean, I think it covers them, sports
Yeah, right.
institutes. I think
Yeah,
we're
it was
good on that
more
one.
trying to restrict it to just camp types of, you know, activities. And we didn't want them as becoming a commercial, you know, renting rooms to the people who were part of the BBTS.
I think it's fine as you pose it, I just wanna make sure I bring up
Yeah.
anything that anybody brought up at the public meeting. Retail setback exemptions. I think in my mind, you broadened that by allowing PUDs on 1 acre rather than 2. And I still don't know why you'd wanna just exempt setbacks for retail as opposed to any of these other uses. I think your idea to look at setbacks as a whole next year, makes sense. But I think it's consistent with the path you're on, so.
But if a developer had a grand idea, he could propose it in a PUD,
Right.
correct? Okay.
And I was gonna tweak that language to make clear it's, they have to control an acre, it doesn't have to be the lot that's an acre. In order to show surrounding uses and.
I'm sorry, say that again?
It's, it says in your PUD section that neighboring landowners or lots could be looked at
Allowed
as
to-
one
right.
PUD. So
Right.
you could make the 1 acre that way,
Right, yes, right.
and the language isn't clear to that right now, I need to fix that.
You mean
Taking motor freight terminal out of contractor yard, yeah.
What's unclear in the PUD is the question of, can you phase the construction? Because, you know, it's one thing to, you know, for people to say, well, here's my acre, and you know, I'd like to be considered for a PUD.
I'll
What
make
does he
it clear,
have to build?
I'll make that clear, Bill.
Okay.
I'll look at that.
I mean, you could assemble 1 acre by having the cooperation of other landowners?
Well, even if it's just him,
No, I didn't,
you know, and he could make a PUD, and then we'd say, okay, you're allowed to build these 2 buildings with 0 lot line clearance, and that's all he builds.
Yeah.
You know?
so right now, what you
And
have for
that's
the,
always a risk.
Bill, what you have right now for the timing is that they have to start construction within a year and intend to complete said construction or approve stages thereof within 4 years. So
Right.
do you want to change that 4 or get rid of it
No,
or make
the
it 10?
question
or-
is.
To me, that made it clear, but it's a short timeline in today's,
Right, but
economy.
what's to prevent you from walking away from the project?
nothing.
Nothing. That's
Never is.
the dilemma.
It never
with a
is.
little bit of the PUD.
Yeah, there never is.
Right. You know, you build the piece that, you know, that you want to build, and And could you combine a PUD, let's take Green Peak as an example. I know he wanted to build a couple of single units on the corner of that lot. Could he combine his property with the existing, already constructed Green Peaks and say, okay, I've got my acre, and down here I'm looking for lot line adjustments?
You maybe. It made sense from a
Okay.
land use perspective, and there was gonna be tied with pedestrian paths.
All right,
So I thought this 4 years seemed short. And it's really more typical to not have that in the zoning and have to have kind of a PUD permit, have anything you want about timing in it. Like that they come report in every year where they're at, that kind of thing would be more typical. I'll look at that section again then. This is one of the projects that just keeps growing. But that, we'll capture everything we can.
Yeah.
Okay, now, one of the other hard ones was the residential uses.
That's about 17,000 pages in tax code.
We can, yeah. Merit number 3. We had obviously a lot of pushback on that.
yeah. And not just from Bill Campbell. I think we got it from Craig Larson as well. I mean, his argument, the argument that I'm hearing is when they ask the question, okay, so you want to develop more businesses. What business? What is it you want to do then? And nobody could answer that question. Or nobody answered it.
No.
I think in my mind, what we're trying to prevent is that whole core area being taken up with little 1 acre lots with single family homes.
We're trying to avoid another moose run.
Right. So that
Right,
was
I mean,
in my
that's-
mind where we were going with this. So whether, I don't know if it makes sense to do smaller, if it's a single family home, it must be on a fifth of an acre lot or whatever, a tiny lot. I mean,
Well, I'd be a lot more comfortable with having a minimum density. You know, saying that if you're gonna do dwelling units, it has to be 6 or 8 per acre. But that didn't seem to resonate either. So I would at least
Well,
recommend
that's what Bill Campbell would like. I mean,
No, he didn't like that because in his mind you'd need to finance all of them at once. He didn't seem to
Right.
follow that you could finance them one at a time.
right,
And
he would like, he has no problem with the single family home site being in an eighth of an acre. But he
Right.
wants to be
But
able
he
to
didn't like-
develop an eighth of an
But he
acre.
doesn't want it regulated
Right,
as a
right.
minimum density. He didn't seem to follow that. So I'd at least recommend, if you keep the residential uses, to go, with his recommendations on getting rid of the minimum lot size. I'd just get rid of the minimum lot size.
but I
Right.
like having the density there, because you can still say, we'll get rid of the lot size, but someone could still decide, oh, I want this 1 acre. for this.
Yeah, that's why I'd like, but just saying that the people at the public hearing didn't like that idea. I'd rather see have a minimum density.
I like the density.
What would be the density?
Well, think about the 2 zones separately, BC, right, you're talking about,
BC and C1, now you know the history of
You're
where
talking about-
C1 started from.
the single family and duplexes in BC and the multifamily in
In
C1, right?
Right.
What
So-
is the history?
So you
The
wanna think about
history
the
was
density
C1
separate.
was split off to prevent the construction of single family homes.
But what do we have there?
That's it.
To prevent
Multifamily, right, it allowed multifamily, but not single family. So most of C1 property was never been built on.
So I looked at some densities before the public hearing to just get a feel for what would make sense. Forest Knoll, which is BC, has about 8 units an acre right now. Let me see the other VC. I looked at some HDRs too, because that's kind of the, like right now, you're gonna have less density in the VC than the HDR. Right, I mean, that's just kind of how it came out. But in Tri-Pyramid, in the HDR, you have about 20 units on an acre. Pine Tree Way is about 5.
Well, wait a minute, the Golden Eagle has gotta be 200.
Yeah, see, that wasn't listed that way, so I didn't pick it up. Osceola is 6 an acre.
When you get into the density though, what you're doing, their big argument, and it seems to hold some water when you look around what's been selling, is that the larger condominium projects they're not there anymore. They just don't, nobody's gonna build them because you
Traditional
can't sell them.
condos of what the type.
You're talking about, 25, 30 units to a building and so forth.
Right.
And when you force that kind of density on it, that's the only thing that can meet that requirement. However, the big argument is these big condominium projects, but they don't say much about the triplexes. I mean, they kind of skipped over them altogether. And they're saying you need a single or a double. Well, I can't imagine that a triple is that much more difficult to sell than a double. So I think that maybe if you stick with the multifamily, which is 3 or more, and you strike the minimum lot size, that it might have a tendency to take care of itself. That you might end up with as much of density as you can get out of it, because you can't push a rope. You can't force something that isn't going to happen. And by putting that density in, you may just be watching those pieces of property stay vacant because they can't meet that requirement.
But then
Well-
how do you stop it? So, because what's been happening is what the market can bear is what was built. And if the market bears single family homes on 1 acre lots, then that's what's gonna be built.
I think you have to somewhat consider what the market will bear, because that's part of the
But then that's what
equation.
we're gonna end up with is a very undense core.
Well,
you
you
do your
could,
best you
you
can.
could do the reverse, one way to do it is to say, single family home sites are allowed, is a maximum lot size. You can't use over a quarter of an acre. Small house, small lot, open up that possibility.
That,
There's a lot of things that are, I think those would be more sellable. But,
and to the
well,
sorts
I
of
don't
people,
really know.
to
That's the
families who
problem.
can populate our school perhaps, who don't want to can't afford to spend $700,000 for a house.
Right, yeah,
That was Catalin's point, that the market,
right, the market has moved on,
yes,
and what we're allowed to build is pretty tough. I mean, everybody's dream is the hotel with a spa.
yes.
In all likelihood, that's gonna be a condominium hotel. I don't know if somebody's gonna just open a hotel.
Yeah.
And,
To rent
because
all those rooms.
there's not enough rental income to justify occupancy. I've never heard of a hotel existing with occupancies at 20%.
Only if it was a destination hotel.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but a condo hotel, maybe done right.
I think the minimum lot size
But
probably makes some sense.
These are a lot, I'm wondering whether the best thing to do is to leave these alone and really dig into what is it that the next phase of development needs to look like? What do we want? To me, the most telling question was, the answer to the question is, you want more density, you want more businesses, tell me what you want. We can't answer that question, we don't know.
Question. So is everybody, because I was under the assumption, speaking with Bill, when we got the presentation from him, that everybody who's been on the board for a while, it's gone through like
Right.
Bill's vision
Yeah,
of what that is?
yeah,
So that's some place to start from of what it could look
right,
like.
yeah.
Okay, I just wasn't sure.
Yeah, I mean, there's some
We gotta take
place
that
of, okay, it's not so much preventing stuff as to what do we want? And I'm struggling with that. I don't think we know what we want.
I don't think do know, we're not developers, and we don't really, you can't be that specific, but what you're trying to do is you're trying to corral things in a certain way. You know, there's a great deal of flexibility within that area you're trying to get. And no, you can't be specific as to what you want for businesses and so forth, but I think that the idea about trying to have a central part of the town, you know, do the best we can to make the central part of town the commercial area where it's got the highest density. Do the best we can to have the next layer out, the village commercial, yeah, we get some spots here and spots there, but, you know, the goal would be to do that, and then the LDR, and then HDR, and then the LDR. But I don't think we can be specific, because I think it's gonna happen the way it's gonna happen. I think what sells, the
Right.
developer's gonna build, and I think that all we can hope to do is to do the best we can to try to keep it within those limitations, but, you know, it's pretty much out of our hands.
But I think
Yeah,
a
well-
first step with the, Bill's recommendations to eliminate the minimum lot size and eliminate the maximum lot coverage and bring the open space percentage down, because right now, you're zoned to have those eat up a lot of land in the BC
Right.
and C1, and they don't eat it. You can't really zone for a maximum lot size, because you can't make somebody subdivide. The way to do that is minimum density. If you wanted it to be minimum density of 8 units an acre, they need to show you, and they have 3/4 of an acre, they need to show you a plan for 6 units, and it could be phased, not good finance.
If the biggest unit they wanna build is, I mean, the smallest unit they wanna build is a triplex, because you're not allowed duplex or a single, they're going to put as many of those in as close as they can, to sell as many as they can, and that's gonna get you the best density that you can get with what will sell.
What in reality happened to Green Peak, is they were never able to sell the center unit.
Yeah.
They sold the 2 outside units right away, they couldn't sell the center one. And then when he came back in and proposed was, I want to build, two units. Well, right now, the zoning doesn't permit 2 units.
Right.
Is that C1?
Well, it was on C1 property, and we say in C1 property, you can't have single-family homes or 2-family homes.
Yeah, then, no.
Right,
VC.
none.
Yeah.
Well, you can on VC, but you couldn't on C1.
But if our goal is density, I mean, we'd be much better off having 2 duplexes closer together than
Right.
5 lines.
And we would be better off today if we had let them build, although the zoning doesn't allow it, you know, but if they could have built two multiple sets of duplexes along where Green Peak is now, they would have more success at selling them. Because they couldn't sell the center unit, you know, nobody wants it, and these are not inexpensive. I mean, you're talking $700,000 a foot, so people want what they want.
Well, maybe we should shift back and allow the duplex and the 2-family, just eliminate or not allow the single.
Just find a way to density.
Well, again, if you don't limit them with regard to lot size. I mean, I'm not trying to play the developer here, I'm just trying to.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
Accomplish what,
If the goal is
We want.
density,
yeah,
then, you know, and then you run into this problem, and I'm sympathetic to the issue, the banks will not give them money. They can't go in, they cannot come in with a plan of 5 acres of land. You know, I'm gonna build all of this stuff on the remaining 3 acres of land, right? And they can't get financing from bank. The bank will say, well, you let me know when you sell all of these properties, or you get commitments to buy them. And they can't get them. So they're down to, I'll build 2 of them, I can get commitments on those, and then you're back to they can't do anything imaginative.
Suppose you did this, and it's unfortunate that Bill didn't participate, wasn't able to in spring as you work through these, and it's a little bit late in the process, but this might sound like I'm trying to make work for myself, but would it make sense to drop amendment number 3, incorporate his recommendations about eliminating the minimum lot size, the single family and two family in VC and drop in the open space down to 20% like everything else there. Incorporate that in Amendment 4 and continue to look at this issue with him next year before you just add duplexes back into C1, but take some more time to think about. Leave those uses as is, but get rid of these elements that are making them too upland.
What are the uses now? Matt?
Sorry,
What are the uses now if we don't change them?
you were talking about removing single family and duplexes from VC, so you'd be leaving those,
Okay, so we're
and you'd
leaving-
be leaving multifamily in C1.
Right.
But as he's pointed out, there are things now that are making them too upland where they don't have to.
but right now, we're allowing single family in DC.
Yes, we do.
On
And-
half an
and-
acre, and his suggestion was get rid of that half an acre, and I think that makes sense.
I'd like to think about it. I think it may, but I'm not so sure that we should just do it. I think he'd like it. But, you gotta consider Moose Run over there. What would he do to Moose Run? I mean, there's unsold property, VC property sitting over there.
We want it to be done.
Well, that's why I wanted to see you do the
Well,
minimum density,
would
but
we
it
want-
doesn't sound
would
like
we
that
want-
idea is fully cooked.
quarter acre home sites.
Why not?
I don't know. That's a big change, you know?
I think if I owned one of the properties on Moose Run now,
Yeah,
and then the developer started building quarter acre,
right,
much smaller units,
yeah.
I wouldn't be happy about that.
I wouldn't think you would, but, you know,
But
I
that's
mean,
where you
but there's
want
all kinds
density,
of things
so
he's
you
done
do,
to jury rig the half acre bit in the past.
Yeah.
I mean, we end up with roads that are, that are not, they're built to town specs, but the road is owned by the property owner, not by the, to get to the half acre minimum. It's
But
silly things.
But that's always been HDR up there, so I mean, what's the difference between?
No, that was
Single family
VC.
home on a quarter acre.
That was all VC.
Yeah, well, it was all, it was all VC, that's right.
Yeah,
But I mean, you can always build condominiums there, so is a 50-unit condominium any better than several?
no, I think
single-family
he's found out that
quarter
there's no
acre
market for them anymore.
Well, I know, but what I'm saying is, I think as far as the people up on Moose Run, I mean, I think it wouldn't be unusual, or they shouldn't be surprised to see a big condominium development move right in there as well.
But to Bill's point that if I were an existing property owner and all of a sudden it changed from half acre to quarter acre,
I mean, why not?
how would you feel?
Why? I don't see where it's so bad. We need places where families can afford to live as opposed to going to camp.
Right,
I
well,
mean, we do. Or would that
well, you
be
need
a diverse
something
town?
to put some energy back in the valley.
Yeah.
You know?
One step toward where we were trying to get would be to at least eliminate the single family. I mean, it seems to me the big argument was the duplex. That was where the big effort came in. And duplexes are more dense than single family homes. So what would be the problem with eliminating the single family home and including or leaving duplex?
Well, his point being, what would I do with Moose Run? The unsold lots in Moose Run?
Duplexes.
Well, and we're
Or
back
triplexes.
to the discussion, you've taken the value of my property and.
Well, no, it's
significantly
always,
slashed it.
that's always been a high-density residential or a VC area. When people bought there, they realized it was a condominium development. Then they changed it afterwards to a portion of it turned to LDR. But it was always intended to be dense up there in that area.
But I'm in favor of what Sarah's saying, which is, drop it for now, take some time, along with the people who own all this property, and sit down and talk about solutions. What would sell, what do we need to do here? I'm not saying do what they want, but at least get a better picture of in their minds, what's gonna make a difference.
Yeah, but he has made a good point that, you know, if what you're trying to do is work toward density, you have some things in there right now that are working against that.
Right.
Like the half-acre lot size and a larger open space requirement for residential use.
So why not make those changes?
I recommend making those changes that he's recommending on those. If you're gonna keep those uses, then I think those changes make sense.
But I mean,
I think that, yeah,
yeah,
it's a step in the right direction.
And then look again next year at the uses and the concept of minimum density when he's able to work with you on it. I mean, it's just unfortunate that you didn't get developer in, that the primary developer wasn't able to give you input till you were at the public hearing.
But we can extend the olive branch to say that we're perfectly willing to talk to you about this after this phase of our meeting cycle.
Right, I mean, you're incorporating a lot of most of his recommendations, but,
Great.
yeah, I mean, I think that is a step toward more density. And it would be an opportunity to help him understand the minimum density idea doesn't mean he'd need to finance 6 or 8 at once. You just have to show.
That's the question of if we could find a way around that, you know, that there's conflict between what the bank wants and and I'm not even sure that he's not giving us a spin here, but
Well, we
but I
can't
do
do that,
know that that's what screwed up Green Peak over and over again.
and we
was
can't
this
do that
issue of
on the
banks.
fly.
Mhm.
We
How
need-
many other towns consider the developer's point of view when they do their zoning to this extent?
Well, I can tell you that I rewrote the Tawas County zoning for the Balsams redevelopment. They paused the project because it didn't fit their zoning and paid me to rewrite the zoning so that the developer's proposal would fit. So when it's the primary developer, it's pretty common. Pretty common in, for Carroll with Bretton Woods too.
But if you're gonna be keeping this amendment in there,
But
revised, why wouldn't you eliminate single family?
personally, I would, but that's not what I'm hearing.
Why wouldn't you?
Be bold.
Why would I not eliminate
The single family?
single families? I'm confronted with the Moose Run reality, number one. I don't know if there's anything to do with that other than build single families up there.
You don't think duplexes are good?
Well, I don't know, I have no idea what the market for duplexes is versus now, our definition of a duplex is what? It's separate ownership?
Well, it could be either a duplex or a company. Either one
Well,
would work.
we actually define it quite specifically.
I realize what I'm
Yeah.
saying, you'd have both.
Right
Yeah.
now, you can have either in UC.
What do you think, John?
This is a difficult one. But there isn't much land left in the valley, period, for single family.
I don't believe that if we took the restriction off, I mean, if we changed any of this stuff, the land has not been flying out for construction of anything.
Right.
And we need to, that's the reality of where we are in the valley these days. Part of it is figuring out. How do you make it more attractive? So
Right. Well, the smaller lot.
smaller lots and smaller
is gonna
units,
Make it more attractive.
they may make it more attractive.
And that's what you give them. That's what we give them.
Less expensive properties.
Right,
Because the high end is saturated.
right.
And there are not that many buyers who want to pay these large numbers.
No,
and the condos really aren't made for,
well, the condos,
Aren't made for
I mean, I'm
full-time
gonna
living.
take it at the face value that what they said is there's no market for condos anymore.
And
There
then, well,
is
the-
condo hotels.
the
but-
condos that have been built here really weren't built for full year-round residents. most of them.
Storage,
Well,
everything else.
Yeah.
I'm still thinking, look at Loon. I mean, what are they building on South Mountain? Either real high-end, single-family homes, or they built a condo hotel.
Yes,
That's what they're building up there.
yes.
You know, the old traditional condos, of 25 units laid out on, with 2-story high. Now, we've got lots of problems. I mean, because we've got height problems, and all kinds of things.
Okay, so to move ahead, I think you're getting rid of Amendment 3.
Yeah.
But maybe incorporating his recommendations on, the lot size and lot coverage into number 4 would be a logical place maybe to have those, right? 'Cause that's about setbacks and dimensions. In number 4, I think he was also asking to have 0 setback in the C1, which you can do in a PUD, and I guess I'd recommend leaving it that it's in a PUD, otherwise, I think going from
I
35 to
think
20
it's-
makes sense for
I
now.
think just reducing on BC and the C1 land from 1 acre for a PUD is the way to go. I mean,
And you're gonna look at all the
otherwise we're
setbacks
gonna have
next
no
year.
rules.
Right.
Number 5, do you feel you need a definition for shared parking? I don't know how I define it other than parking that's shared.
Shared parking.
Somebody asked for a
Parking,
definition for
definition
shared
of parking
parking.
that's shared.
That was really.
What were we trying to accomplish with that?
It might be time-wise, like
Yeah,
a Monday through Friday business sharing with a
right,
chapel.
that's right, there was a
thing.
church the church property
That's
during
an
the week.
example,
people
that's a
could park.
typical example.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, we have it in Town Square.
Or a
We
summer
had-
seasonal business and a winter seasonal.
Right, okay.
You don't think we can define it?
You want me to try, don't you? I see that. All right, I'll try. We'll see.
Thank you.
And I think the gentleman wrote to follow up on this next one, that the 1,000-foot distance be qualified as non-residential, and
Yeah, he was
Fine,
thinking
just
fine for commercial.
put that language in.
Mhm.
Yeah. That gets me through my list.
Who was that long letter from?
New owner,
Oh,
Ryan Turnquist.
But it doesn't live here year round, right?
No,
Unfortunately, he brings it forth.
Yeah.
It seems to know his
yeah, I was
stats
telling you,
exactly
you're
what I
gonna
was
join the
thinking.
planning board after writing that letter.
So your next meeting is November 8th.
Yes.
Second Thursday
Yeah.
of the month.
I can get you these changes the week before. I'll put on my calendar to get you. Won't be sooner.
yeah, thank you for making it to this meeting.
And that will be the voting one.
So on the 8th, you'll,
Public hearing.
on,
I could vote, but it would be a public hearing.
It's a
No.
public hearing.
no, November 8th, you'll look at my attempt to do what you told me now.
Right,
And if that language looks okay, you'll vote to have a public hearing on it in December.
December.
Oh, okay.
got it, okay.
Yeah, no, I want you to have another crack at the language that I'm leaving here. We don't wanna go from my imagination to public hearing.
That's nice.
Okay. Meeting adjourned. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
You should think about whether to, if the next is a public meeting,
Yeah.
whether it might make sense to ask Camplin to come,
Oh, he'll come. I got no doubt about that.
even though it's not an official public hearing.
No, but it's a public meeting.
Yeah.
So we can take comment.
He wanted to come today. But it'd be.
So
I can let him know.